Title: The Haunting of Midnight Carnival. It was Halloween night, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie pallor over the sinister, abandoned carnival grounds. The place had been abandoned for years, but the stories of its past still echoed through the town. Some said it was cursed, others claimed it was a graveyard for lost souls, and a few whispered that the ghost of the carnival ringmaster still roamed there. Among the curious thrill-seekers who dared to venture into the forbidden territory was Sarah, an adventurous young woman with a penchant for the unknown. She'd heard the tales, but on this spine-tingling night, she was determined to uncover the truth. Armed with nothing but a flickering flashlight, she approached the rusted entrance gate, which shrieked in protest as she pushed it open. As she stepped onto the carnival grounds, the atmosphere became suffocating, the air thick with foreboding. The carnival had been left in haste, with rides frozen in time, their vibrant colors now faded and peeling. Sarah couldn't help but shiver as she passed a derelict carousel, its once cheerful music replaced by an eerie silence. She continued deeper into the carnival, her flashlight cutting through the inky darkness. Then, from the shadows, a soft, haunting melody drifted to her ears. It was the distant sound of a calliope organ, playing a tune that sent chills down her spine. Curiosity and fear battled within her, but her determination propelled her forward. The music led her to the heart of the carnival, where a grand tent, more faded than the rest, beckoned her. Pushing aside the moth-eaten curtains, she entered, her flashlight revealing a ghostly figure in a tattered ringmaster's attire. The ringmaster's spectral form had an otherworldly, translucent quality. His eyes bore a melancholic gleam, and a twisted grin revealed his decaying teeth. He extended an ethereal hand, gesturing for Sarah to join him. "Welcome to my carnival," he rasped, his voice echoing through the empty tent. "You seek answers, do you not?" Sarah, trembling but resolute, nodded. "I've heard the stories. I want to know the truth." The ringmaster's eyes seemed to pierce her soul. "Very well," he sighed. "The truth you shall have. But beware, for it comes with a price." He beckoned her closer, and as she stepped nearer, she saw a flicker of memories in his eyes. He began to recount the carnival's dark history, the events that had brought him to this ghostly existence. Decades ago, the carnival was a place of wonder, where laughter and joy filled the air. But behind the scenes, a sinister secret festered. The ringmaster, a man named Benjamin Crow, had made a pact with dark forces, trading his own soul for the carnival's success. It thrived for a time, drawing in crowds from miles around, but it came at a terrible cost. The carnival's success was fueled by the misery of its attendees, and the spirits of those who had died there still lingered, seeking vengeance. As the ringmaster spoke, the tent seemed to come to life, the ghostly apparitions of carnival-goers long past swirling around them, their wailing and moaning filling the air. Sarah felt a chill deep within her as the ringmaster continued his tale. He explained that he was bound to this cursed place, unable to move on until someone could release him and put an end to the carnival's torment. Tears welled in the ringmaster's eyes as he confessed the depth of his regret. He had been consumed by ambition and had led countless souls to their demise. But now he longed for redemption, for someone to uncover the truth and set him free. Sarah, her heart heavy with the weight of the carnival's grim history, made a solemn promise. She would help the ringmaster find peace. With a determined resolve, she embarked on a quest to uncover the carnival's dark secrets, facing terrifying apparitions and vengeful spirits along the way. As she delved deeper into the past, she unearthed documents and diaries that told tales of sorrow and despair, of lives lost in pursuit of cheap thrills and twisted entertainment. Each revelation brought her closer to understanding the malevolent forces that had kept the carnival trapped in a never-ending Halloween night. With newfound knowledge and a growing sense of dread, Sarah returned to the ringmaster and presented her findings. The circus tent seemed to come to life, with ghostly figures of the past watching in anticipation. The ringmaster, his eyes filled with hope, thanked Sarah for her efforts. He had been trapped in the carnival's eternal nightmarish cycle for too long, and now it was time to put an end to the darkness that had plagued the carnival and its restless spirits. Together, Sarah and the ringmaster performed a ritual to break the curse. As the incantations and symbols filled the air, a powerful surge of energy enveloped the carnival grounds. The malevolent spirits wailed and shrieked as they were banished, and the carnival's rusty rides crumbled to dust. In the end, the sinister carnival was no more, and the ringmaster's form began to fade away. With a grateful smile, he nodded to Sarah. "You have given me the peace I sought. I can finally rest." As the carnival grounds transformed into a peaceful, moonlit meadow, Sarah watched as the ringmaster's spirit ascended, finding the redemption he had longed for. The Halloween night had come to a close, and the sinister carnival was no more. The eerie atmosphere that had gripped the abandoned carnival grounds now dissipated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of relief and closure. Sarah knew that the town's stories would change, and the cursed carnival would be remembered for its redemption rather than its malevolence. And as she walked away from the meadow, Sarah carried with her the knowledge of a Halloween night's dark secrets, and the understanding that sometimes the past could come back to haunt, but it could also find its way to redemption in the end. Title: The Haunting of Hollow Manor. Halloween night cast its chilling spell upon Hollow Manor, a decaying mansion known for its malevolent history. In the heart of the town, it stood as a shadowy sentinel, its once majestic facade now a crumbling relic of a time long past. Alex, an amateur paranormal investigator with an insatiable curiosity for the supernatural, had heard the stories that whispered through the town's streets, and on this eerie night, he decided to uncover the mansion's darkest secrets. Armed with an array of ghost hunting equipment and a sense of trepidation, Alex ventured through the moonlit woods surrounding Hollow Manor. The night was filled with an ominous silence, broken only by the rustling leaves and the distant howls of the wind. The mansion loomed before him, its windows shattered, and its walls stained by decades of decay. As Alex crossed the threshold, an eerie coldness engulfed him, seeping into his bones. The air felt heavy with the weight of the past, as if the mansion itself held memories that refused to be forgotten. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper, broken chandeliers, and furniture cloaked in white sheets, waiting to be unveiled by time. The atmosphere grew more oppressive as he delved deeper into the mansion, each creaking floorboard and whispering gust of wind an unsettling reminder of the mansion's haunted legacy. He could sense a presence, an indomitable force that watched his every step. Then, a sudden, chilling whisper echoed through the corridors, a spectral voice from the past. "Who dares disturb my slumber?" Startled, Alex spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. He clutched his ghost hunting equipment, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "I am Alex," he replied, his voice quivering. "I've come to learn your story." The mansion seemed to respond, the very walls shuddering as it recounted the tale of James Holloway, the mansion's former owner. James had been a ruthless man, amassing great wealth at the expense of countless lives. He had exploited the townspeople, forcing them to toil in his factory under inhumane conditions. His greed knew no bounds, and his actions had dire consequences. As Alex listened to the mansion's ghostly narrative, he discovered the grudges and injustices that had festered within these walls for generations. The spirit of James Holloway, trapped in the mansion, sought retribution against the town that had prospered from his ill-gotten wealth, while he languished in eternal torment. Determined to reveal the truth, Alex continued his exploration of Hollow Manor, guided by the mansion's ghostly apparitions. Spectral figures emerged from the shadows, their mournful expressions etched with the weight of the past. They led him through hidden passages and secret rooms, each unveiling more of James Holloway's malevolent deeds. But the vengeful spirit of the mansion's former owner was not content with mere revelations. His rage grew with every step Alex took. He began to manifest more powerfully, hurling objects through the air and unleashing a cacophony of anguished wails. The mansion itself seemed to transform, its once decaying halls taking on a nightmarish, labyrinthine quality. Alex's fear escalated as he faced the full force of James Holloway's fury. He realized that he had unwittingly awakened a malevolent spirit, one driven by a thirst for vengeance that could not be quenched. The consequences of meddling with the supernatural had become inescapable. Desperate to find a solution, Alex delved into his ghost hunting equipment, searching for a way to pacify the restless spirit. It was then that he discovered a peculiar, aged photograph hidden among the records he had collected. It depicted James Holloway in his earlier years, a vision of innocence and youthful hope before the corrupting influence of wealth. With trembling hands, Alex presented the photograph to the raging spirit. "This is you, James," he implored. "Remember who you once were. Find the forgiveness you seek." The mansion quaked as James Holloway's fury clashed with the memories of his past. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, the spirit wavered, torn between vengeance and redemption. Finally, as the night wore on and the moon began to wane, James Holloway let out a mournful cry, his spectral form beginning to dissipate. "I remember," he whispered, his voice filled with agony and remorse. In the midst of his revelation, the mansion seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief, and the haunting presence that had shrouded Hollow Manor began to recede. The oppressive atmosphere gradually lifted, and the mansion's decay seemed to slow. Alex knew that his intrusion had been the catalyst for James Holloway's reckoning. The consequences of meddling with the supernatural had been perilous, but they had also led to a spirit's chance at redemption. As Alex exited the decaying mansion, he looked back at Hollow Manor, its once vindictive spirits now at rest. The moonlight bathed the mansion in a hauntingly beautiful glow, transforming it from a place of malevolence into one of profound melancholy. The tale of Hollow Manor would be passed down through the generations, a reminder of the perils of unresolved grudges and the consequences of meddling with the supernatural. And Alex, forever changed by his encounter with the vengeful spirit, understood that some secrets were better left undisturbed, and that some souls could find peace even in the most terrifying of circumstances. Title: Whispers in the Mist. On a chilling Halloween night, a thick blanket of fog descended upon the small town's cemetery, cloaking the graves in an eerie shroud. Amongst the sea of tombstones, Emily, a grief-stricken widow, ventured with a heart heavy as stone. Her husband, William, had been laid to rest in this desolate place, and this night was the first time she'd returned since his passing. Emily's footsteps echoed through the cemetery as she made her way to William's grave. The cold, damp air clung to her like a spectral presence, causing her to shiver with both fear and sorrow. The pale moonlight cast elongated shadows, creating a macabre scene that intensified her unease. Upon reaching the modest headstone, Emily whispered her husband's name, her voice quivering. Tears welled in her eyes as she placed a bouquet of white lilies on his final resting place. She had longed to visit him but had been too overwhelmed by grief. The fog deepened, veiling her surroundings in an impenetrable haze. It felt as though the boundary between the living and the dead had blurred, and the cemetery had become a realm where the spirits of the deceased roamed freely. As Emily stood in silent contemplation, an eerie, mournful wail pierced the air. It was a sound that sent shivers down her spine and turned her blood to ice. The ghostly apparitions of the deceased began to emerge from the fog, their faces etched with an unending sorrow. William, in his ghostly form, appeared beside Emily's husband's grave. His eyes, once filled with warmth and love, were now hauntingly vacant. Emily's heart ached as she realized the pain etched across his spectral features. But it wasn't just William. Other spirits began to materialize, each with their own stories of woe. They drifted through the fog, moaning and whispering incoherently. The very air seemed to hum with their sorrow, as if the cemetery itself grieved alongside them. Emily, trembling with fear, sought to leave the cemetery, but the spirits' ethereal forms blocked her path. Their mournful faces surrounded her, and their spectral hands reached out as if imploring her for something she couldn't comprehend. Desperation gnawed at her as she gazed upon the faces of the deceased, trapped in a liminal space between life and death. It was then that she heard the whispers, soft and haunting, as the spirits attempted to communicate. "Help us, find peace, release our souls." Emily realized that these restless spirits had been bound to the cemetery by their unfulfilled desires and unresolved grievances. They sought salvation, a closure that had eluded them in life. In her heart, Emily felt an overwhelming empathy for these lost souls. She knew that she had to help them find peace, just as she had yearned to find solace in her husband's memory. With newfound resolve, she began to converse with the spirits, asking about their unmet needs and listening to the tales of their earthly regrets. Each spirit had a unique story to tell, each a testament to the suffering they had endured in life. Some had been wronged, others had lost loved ones prematurely, and some simply yearned for one last moment of happiness. Emily, guided by compassion, made a promise to fulfill their final wishes. One by one, she helped the spirits to find closure. She sought out the living relatives of the deceased, delivering long-forgotten messages and arranging for wrongs to be made right. With each act of kindness, the fog in the cemetery seemed to dissipate, the boundary between life and death growing more distinct. As the night wore on, Emily approached her husband's spirit, who still stood by his grave, lingering in sorrow. She whispered her love for him and expressed the profound pain his loss had brought. But she also assured him that she would find the peace that had eluded them both. With a final embrace, William's spirit dissolved into the mist, his eyes filled with gratitude. Emily felt a sense of closure that she had longed for since his passing, a bittersweet relief that transcended the thin boundary between life and death. As the last of the fog dispersed, the cemetery transformed into a serene, moonlit landscape. Emily, her heart heavy but also strangely light, knew that the spirits had finally found peace, and that their sorrowful whispers had been silenced. Grief and closure, intertwined in a dance of sorrow and solace, had played out under the pale moonlight. With a final, lingering look at her husband's grave, Emily left the cemetery, forever changed by the surreal and touching encounter with the restless spirits. The boundary between life and death may be thin, but on that Halloween night, Emily had found a way to bring solace to those who had been trapped in the liminal space, a gesture of kindness that lingered in the hearts of both the living and the dead. Title: Eyes of the Ancient Woods. Halloween night had descended upon the dense, secluded forest, cloaking it in an impenetrable mist that swallowed all light. The trees stood as dark, towering sentinels, their ancient branches intertwining like gnarled fingers, a sinister dance of nature's secrets. Jake, a seasoned forest ranger, patrolled the heart of the woods with a deep sense of unease. He had heard the whispers from the townsfolk, stories of an ancient evil that awoke with the changing of the seasons, and on this night he was determined to confront it. The fog clung to his skin like a ghostly embrace as he ventured deeper into the woods, his flashlight cutting through the inky darkness. The air was filled with an oppressive stillness, the only sound being the rhythmic crunch of his footsteps on fallen leaves. Each step was a deliberate push against the overwhelming sense of foreboding that weighed upon him. Jake had been a forest ranger for many years, but tonight the forest seemed different. It exuded a malevolent presence, a feeling that something older and darker than any natural phenomenon lurked beneath the surface. As he traversed the eerie woods, he couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. His every move was followed by an unsettling silence, as if the forest itself held its breath. Jake knew he was not alone. Something, or someone, was hidden in the shadows. Then, a low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, followed by the rustle of leaves and the snapping of branches. The sound was unnatural, something that didn't belong in the forest's nocturnal chorus. Jake's heart quickened as he gripped his flashlight, sweeping its beam into the darkness. The light revealed a nightmarish figure, a hulking silhouette with eyes that gleamed like fiery coals. It was a grotesque creature, a living embodiment of the ancient wood's malevolence. It stepped into the feeble light, revealing a face twisted by years of agony and bitterness. The entity's eyes bore into Jake's soul, and in their depths he saw centuries of torment and darkness. The creature radiated hostility, a hatred for humanity and an insatiable hunger for chaos. It was the malevolent heart of the forest itself, awakened on Halloween night. Who dares trespass in my domain? The entity growled, its voice a sinister whisper. Jake, his heart pounding, identified himself as a forest ranger and demanded the entity's intentions. But the creature's response was a guttural laughter that sent shivers down his spine. It was a laughter devoid of mirth, a sound that chilled him to the core. The malevolent entity spoke in riddles and cryptic warnings, revealing that it was a force older than time itself, a relic of a world before humanity. It had slept beneath the forest soil, nourishing on the suffering of the land, and now it had awakened, seeking to extend its influence. As the night wore on, Jake realized that he was in a desperate struggle for survival. The malevolent entity sought to consume his very soul, to add his essence to the centuries of torment it had accumulated. The forest, once a place of beauty, had become a nightmarish labyrinth designed to ensnare its prey. But Jake, fueled by the courage born of desperation, fought back. He relied on his knowledge of the forest and the tools of his trade, battling the entity in a nightmarish game of wits. He set snares and traps, attempting to outmaneuver the ancient evil. Each step forward was a terrifying confrontation, a test of his resolve. The battle raged through the long hours of the night, and Jake's flashlight became a weapon against the entity's unnatural darkness. The forest echoed with their struggles, the ancient trees watching in silent judgment. Then, with a final, desperate effort, Jake managed to weaken the malevolent entity. Its form flickered, the fiery eyes dimming as it let out a last, mournful howl. The forest itself seemed to sigh in relief as the entity's presence slowly dissipated into the shadows, its darkness absorbed by the ancient woods. Jake, battered and exhausted, finally emerged from the heart of the forest, the first light of dawn breaking through the mist. He had confronted the darkness within nature, the malevolent spirit of the ancient woods that sought to consume all life, and he had emerged victorious. But the experience had left its mark on him. Jake knew that the forest would forever hold its secrets, a reminder of the thin boundary between the known and the unknown, the natural and the supernatural. The courage to face the unknown had been his weapon, and the ancient woods had tested his mettle. As the dawn's light continued to wash over the forest, the ancient trees seemed to stand a little taller, their secrets a little deeper. Halloween night had come to an end, and the malevolent entity was silenced, but the memory of that night's horrors would remain etched in the heart of the forest, a testament to the courage of one forest ranger who had dared to confront the darkness within. Title: Echoes of the Forgotten Asylum. On a shadowy Halloween night, the pale moon hung low over the decaying facade of the abandoned asylum. Its dilapidated walls bore witness to decades of suffering and torment, a place shrouded in chilling tales of the mentally afflicted who had once called it home. Lisa, an urban explorer with an insatiable curiosity for the unknown, had heard the whispers of the asylum's past, and on this fateful night, she embarked on a journey to uncover its darkest secrets. The asylum stood as a relic of forgotten pain, its very presence an oppressive reminder of the horrors that had transpired within. Crumbling walls, shattered windows, and graffiti-laden hallways concealed the torment of countless former patients. Lisa, a fearless adventurer, approached the entrance with trepidation, her camera and flashlight in hand. With each creaking step, she ventured deeper into the heart of the asylum, where chilling silence hung heavy in the air. The walls seemed to reverberate with the forgotten cries of the tormented souls who had once dwelled there. As she explored the dimly lit corridors, her flashlight revealed eerie remnants of the past, abandoned wheelchairs, rusted restraints, and faded patient records. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive as Lisa's presence awakened the restless spirits of the asylum. Flickering lights and strange noises punctuated her journey, causing her heart to race. It was as if the tormented souls, long imprisoned within these forsaken walls, were drawn to her curiosity, yearning to share their stories. Amidst the darkened hallways, Lisa heard faint whispers, ghostly murmurs that seemed to dance on the edge of her hearing. The disembodied voices spoke of injustices, of suffering, and of the lost hopes and dreams of those who had once sought refuge within the asylum's walls. Lisa's heart went out to them, but the voices grew louder, more insistent, as if the spirits longed for her to bear witness to their agony. In one of the asylum's dimly lit rooms, Lisa's flashlight revealed a peculiar painting on the wall. It depicted a woman, her face contorted in anguish, her hands reaching out from the canvas as if seeking escape. The painting's eyes held a haunting, tormented gaze that followed her every move. The room itself felt like a chamber of despair. And as Lisa continued to explore, she became increasingly aware of the spirits' presence. Their wails and cries grew more pronounced, their desperation palpable. Lisa realized that her curiosity had unwittingly triggered something beyond her control. The paranormal phenomena intensified as she delved further into the asylum. Objects moved on their own, ghostly figures appeared and disappeared, and unsettling, cold gusts of wind swept through the hallways. The tormented spirits began to manifest, their spectral forms conveying the pain and suffering they had endured. Amidst the growing chaos, Lisa stumbled upon a long-forgotten document. It contained the records of a former patient, detailing their wrongful incarceration and the inhumane treatment they had suffered. The injustice of it all was heartbreaking, and Lisa understood that the spirits were seeking not only to share their stories, but to seek justice for the wrongs they had endured. Lisa realized that she needed to leave, that the asylum was a place of torment and that she was in over her head. But as she turned to escape, the spirits closed in around her, their spectral forms blocking her way. Desperation clawed at her as she realized that she was trapped within the asylum's relentless grip. The spirits, in their agonizing torment, sought to draw Lisa into their suffering, to make her understand the horrors that had taken place within the asylum's walls. They beckoned her toward the painting on the wall, and as she approached, it came to life, its spectral hands reaching out to grasp her. In a moment of terror, Lisa found herself transported into the painting itself, a realm of nightmarish torment where the tormented spirits surrounded her. Their anguished faces bore silent witness to the inescapable horrors of the past. As Lisa struggled to find a way out, she heard the spirits' voices, their collective anguish imploring her to bear witness, to remember their stories, and to seek justice on their behalf. It was a chilling revelation, a realization that the consequences of her curiosity were far graver than she had ever imagined. With an indomitable will, Lisa fought to escape the painting's grip, pushing through the spectral hands that sought to drag her into the abyss. As she emerged back into the asylum's dimly lit room, she understood the urgency of her mission. She needed to share the spirit's stories, to reveal the injustices of the past, and to seek the justice that had eluded them for so long. With every ounce of strength, Lisa sprinted from the asylum, her camera and flashlight clutched tightly. The spirits of the asylum seemed to wail and reach out as she fled, their presence fading as she left the haunted place behind. On that Halloween night, Lisa had experienced the chilling consequences of curiosity. her brush with the supernatural serving as a haunting reminder of the horrors that lay hidden beneath the surface. The asylum, its memories etched in the torment of its former patients, would forever remain a place of darkness and despair, a testament to the enduring legacy of suffering. Title: Shadows of Halloween Hollow. Halloween night had cast a sinister shroud over the small, fog-ridden town of Halloween Hollow. Its streets, usually bustling with laughter and the joy of the holiday, now lay cloaked in darkness. Detective Ryan, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the unsolvable, stood at the heart of the town, haunted by the gruesome murders that had terrorized the community. The first murder had been horrific, the victim's body mutilated beyond recognition. As the town's only detective, Ryan had taken on the case with a grim determination to bring the perpetrator to justice. But what he had uncovered was a series of deaths with a chilling supernatural connection, deaths that defied logic and explanation. The fog, thick and suffocating, seemed to seep into the very souls of the townspeople, instilling a sense of dread that matched the sinister atmosphere. Ryan had interviewed the witnesses, each one describing a lurking malevolent presence that had haunted the town for decades, a force that emerged only on Halloween night. The entity was shrouded in legend, a shadowy figure that had once been human but was now something far more sinister. It was said to be the embodiment of evil, a manifestation of the darkness that festered within small communities. Halloween Hollow had been its hunting ground for centuries, and on this night it had returned with a vengeance. The key to solving the case lay in uncovering the entity's identity, a task that seemed insurmountable. Ryan delved into the town's history, searching for clues in old records and dusty archives. The stories he uncovered spoke of a curse that had been placed on the town centuries ago, a curse that had bound the entity to Halloween Hollow. As he sifted through the tales of horror and despair, Ryan became increasingly aware of the malevolent presence that seemed to watch his every move. It lurked in the shadows, a pervasive force that whispered threats and promises of torment. The entity reveled in the fear it instilled, and Ryan understood that he was both its prey and its puppet. The murders continued, each one more gruesome than the last. The town's fear had grown to a fevered pitch, with paranoia and mistrust spreading like wildfire. It seemed as though Halloween Hollow had descended into a nightmarish abyss, a place where the living and the dead coexisted in a state of perpetual terror. With a growing desperation, Ryan sought the guidance of the town's oldest resident, an elderly woman named Agnes who had been present for the entity's previous appearances. She spoke of a ritual that could potentially banish the malevolent force, a ritual that required courage and self-sacrifice. As Halloween night loomed on the horizon, Ryan prepared to confront the entity in a climactic showdown. He armed himself with knowledge, weapons, and the determination to face the embodiment of evil head-on. The townspeople, their faith in him unwavering, rallied behind him, ready to take a stand against the darkness that had plagued their town for centuries. The night was a cacophony of chaos and fear, the entity's presence growing stronger with each passing moment. Fog enshrouded the town, creating a disorienting maze of shadows and chilling echoes. The malevolent force seemed to possess the very air, its breath hot and rancid against Ryan's skin. The climactic showdown unfolded in the heart of Halloween Hollow. The town's streets transformed into a battleground between good and evil. The entity emerged from the shadows, a grotesque and twisted figure that defied description. It hissed threats and promises of eternal suffering, its voice a chilling cacophony of despair. Ryan, driven by the courage of a town united, stood his ground, refusing to yield to the entity's malevolence. He recited the ritual Agnes had imparted, a chant that had the power to weaken the entity's grasp on Halloween Hollow. As he spoke the words, a blinding light erupted, bathing the town in an ethereal glow. The entity writhed in agony, its form contorting and shrinking. It let out a final, anguished howl before vanishing into the shadows, its malevolence dissipating like a nightmarish dream. The town had been freed from the curse that had bound it for centuries, and the fog began to recede. As the first light of dawn broke through the dissipating fog, the town of Halloween Hollow emerged from the darkness. Its streets were filled with the triumphant cheers of the townspeople, who had faced the evil within their community and emerged victorious. But Ryan, though celebrated as a hero, knew the weight of the darkness that lurked within even the smallest of towns. The struggle between good and evil was an eternal battle, one that would continue to play out, not only in Halloween Hollow but in every corner of the world. As the fog-shrouded town of Halloween Hollow returned to a sense of normalcy, its residents would always remember the night they confronted the malevolent entity that had haunted their community. The darkness had been banished, but its echoes would linger, a chilling reminder of the enduring struggle between good and evil. Title: Whispers of the Watery Curse. On a chilling Halloween night, a thick, cursed fog draped itself over the mysterious lake, shrouding it in an eerie, almost supernatural atmosphere. Legends had whispered of the curse that lingered over the lake for generations, and Kayla, a skeptical journalist with a reputation for debunking myths, was determined to uncover the truth. She believed that there was a rational explanation behind every legend, and this cursed lake was no exception. The lake had always been a place of dread in the small town, its waters hiding a dark secret. It was said that the spirit of a vengeful water entity dwelled beneath the surface, seeking revenge on anyone who dared to trespass on its domain. Local tales recounted the mysterious disappearances and drownings that had occurred over the years, each one attributed to the lake's curse. Kayla, armed with her camera and notebook, approached the cursed lake, her skepticism unshaken. She had interviewed the town's residents, seeking explanations for the legends. Some believed the water spirit was a malevolent force seeking retribution, while others thought it was simply a tragic coincidence that had given rise to the legends. As she conducted her investigation, Kayla couldn't help but feel the oppressive atmosphere of the lake. The fog clung to her skin, and a cold chill seemed to settle in her bones. She dismissed it as mere superstition, a psychological effect of the legends. But as she ventured closer to the lake's edge, she heard it, a haunting, mournful wail that seemed to echo from beneath the water's surface. The sound sent shivers down her spine, but she attributed it to the wind playing tricks on her ears. Her skepticism began to waver when strange occurrences continued to unfold. Objects inexplicably moved on their own, and ghostly apparitions appeared and disappeared in the fog. The town's residents, normally skeptical themselves, spoke of their own eerie encounters with the water spirit. As Kayla delved deeper into her investigation, she began to uncover the stories of those who had fallen victim to the lake's curse. Each tale was more tragic and inexplicable than the last, and it became increasingly clear that the legends were more than mere superstition. The lake was, indeed, cursed, and it sought to exact its revenge on those who dared to challenge its power. The lake's curse, personified by the malevolent water spirit, seemed to have taken an interest in Kayla. It whispered to her in her dreams, urging her to leave the town and abandon her investigation. The spirit's voice was haunting, a chilling presence that seemed to seep into her thoughts and fill her with a growing sense of dread. But Kayla, determined to uncover the truth, refused to yield to the spirit's threats. She pressed on, her skepticism fading in the face of mounting evidence. Her camera captured eerie images, and her notes told the stories of the lake's victims, all of whom had met untimely and unexplained ends. As Halloween night approached, the curse of the lake seemed to intensify. The fog grew thicker, and the chilling wails of the water spirit echoed through the town. The residents, who had once regarded Kayla with skepticism, now pleaded with her to leave the lake behind, to abandon her investigation before it was too late. But Kayla, driven by a fierce determination, continued to confront the lake's curse. She believed that there had to be a rational explanation behind the legends, a scientific reason that could dispel the town's superstition. In a climactic moment, as the cursed fog enveloped the lake, the malevolent water spirit emerged from the depths. Its spectral form, its eyes filled with torment and hatred, reached out to grasp Kayla, its watery fingers closing around her with a bone-chilling coldness. The spirit's voice filled her mind, a haunting lament that revealed the depths of its anguish and the pain it had suffered. It spoke of a long-forgotten betrayal, of a love lost, and of the curse that had condemned it to seek revenge for all eternity. Kayla, paralyzed by the spirit's grip, realized the truth. The lake's curse was a real and vengeful force, a tragedy of the past that had been relegated to legend. The entity sought to make her pay for her skepticism, to exact its revenge as it had on countless others who had dared to challenge its power. With a final, desperate effort, Kayla struggled to break free from the spirit's grasp. She fought to return to the surface, her heart pounding as she gasped for breath. The lake's curse seemed to scream in agony, its form contorting and fading as Kayla emerged from its watery depths. The cursed fog lifted, and the lake returned to an eerie stillness. The town's residents, who had watched the horrifying encounter, knew that the legend had been all too real, and Kayla had paid the price for her skepticism. As Halloween night drew to a close, the town of Halloween Hollow would forever remember the story of the cursed lake and the journalist who had ventured too far in her quest for the truth. The power of legends, it seemed, could not be underestimated, and the price of skepticism had been paid in full. Title: Lost in the Shifting Shadows. On a desolate Halloween night, Mark found himself alone on a fog-shrouded street in a small, eerie town. He had taken a wrong turn while on a road trip, and the unfamiliar town had suddenly appeared, its streets twisting and shifting in the dense fog. Mark was lost, and the disorienting atmosphere filled him with dread. The street before him seemed to stretch endlessly into the fog, and the dim streetlights cast long, distorted shadows that danced like specters. Mark had no choice but to continue, the town offering no signs or markers to guide him. The silence was deafening, and the feeling of isolation weighed heavily on his chest. As Mark wandered through the town's labyrinthine streets, he began to notice something unsettling. The street behind him, the one he had just walked, had changed. The buildings had shifted, the layout was different, and the fog had become even denser. It was as if the town itself was playing tricks on him, altering its landscape with each step he took. With growing unease, Mark quickened his pace, trying to escape the shifting streets. But it was as though the town conspired against him, its layout changing in unpredictable ways. The fog seemed to envelop him, the ethereal mist clinging to his clothes and hair like ghostly fingers. It was then that Mark first noticed the sinister figure that seemed to stalk him. A shadowy presence, it moved with unnatural speed, always just out of his line of sight. It was as if the town had a guardian, a malevolent entity that sought to ensnare any lost souls who ventured into its maze. Mark's heart raced as he continued to navigate the ever-changing streets, the sinister figure drawing closer with each shift. The fog seemed to thicken, its disorienting embrace intensifying his sense of dread. He could hear whispering voices in the mist, faint and incoherent, as if the town itself was taunting him. Desperation set in as Mark realized he was trapped in the town's shifting maze, pursued by a relentless malevolent force. The streetlights flickered and dimmed, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to reach out for him. He could feel the town closing in, its streets twisting and contorting, confining him to a nightmarish reality. With every step, Mark could feel the sinister figure drawing closer, its presence an overwhelming dread that threatened to consume him. He tried to run, but the town's shifting streets seemed to conspire against him, leading him in circles and dead ends. The town's malevolent entity whispered to him, its voice a chilling whisper that filled his mind with terror. It spoke of the fear of the unknown, the perils of being lost, and the inexorable dread of never finding a way out. Mark's escape seemed impossible, the town's shifting streets and the sinister figure closing in on him from all sides. He could feel the fog seeping into his very soul, eroding his sanity and resolve. But in a moment of sheer desperation, Mark had an idea. He would reverse his path, retracing his steps through the town's ever-changing streets. It was a risky gamble, but it was his only chance of breaking free from the malevolent entity's pursuit. With a pounding heart, Mark turned and retraced his steps, his sense of disorientation intensifying as the town continued to shift around him. The fog grew denser, and the sinister figure seemed to hesitate, momentarily thrown off by Mark's unexpected decision. As Mark retraced his steps, he could hear the town's malevolent entity growling in frustration. It was as if the town itself resented his defiance, its streets twisting and turning in a chaotic frenzy. But Mark persisted, driven by the fear of the unknown and the determination to escape the town's clutches. In a final, desperate effort, Mark's gamble paid off. The town's shifting streets seemed to lose their power over him, and he found himself back at the street where he had first entered the town. The fog began to dissipate, and the sinister figure, thwarted and enraged, faded into the shadows. Mark had escaped the town's malevolent grip, but the experience had left a lasting scar on his psyche. The fear of the unknown and the perils of being lost had become all too real for him. As he continued his road trip, he couldn't shake the feeling that the shifting streets and the sinister figure would haunt his nightmares for years to come. The small, eerie town, with its ever-changing streets and malevolent entity, would forever remain a place of dread and darkness, a testament to the perils of being lost and the fear of the unknown. Title: Whispers of the Grinning Spirits. On a Halloween night veiled in eerie fog, Samantha, a fearless paranormal enthusiast, embarked on a visit to the town's graveyard. She had heard stories of playful but mischievous ghosts who were said to roam the ancient burial grounds, and her curiosity had gotten the best of her. The graveyard was a place of serenity by day, with its weathered tombstones and towering trees. But on this fateful night, it took on an entirely different atmosphere. The fog enveloped the graveyard in a shroud of mist, and the moon cast long, ethereal shadows over the tombstones. Samantha moved through the graveyard with a mix of trepidation and excitement. She had come prepared with a camera and an EVP recorder, eager to capture any signs of the paranormal. As she walked among the tombstones, the silence was palpable, broken only by the distant hooting of an owl and the soft rustle of leaves. It wasn't long before Samantha's presence seemed to stir the graveyard's playful spirits. As she approached a particularly old and weathered tombstone, she heard a soft, mischievous chuckle. She glanced around, but there was no one in sight. Determined to make contact, Samantha began to ask questions aloud, addressing the spirits who were said to inhabit the graveyard. She inquired about their presence in the afterlife, hoping to record any responses on her EVP device. But the spirits had a sense of humor that soon became evident. Instead of the eerie, whispered responses she had hoped for, Samantha's EVP recorder captured bursts of laughter, the spectral voices sounding jovial and mischievous. The spirits seemed to delight in her curiosity, turning the encounter into a game of ghostly hide and seek. The fog grew denser as Samantha continued to explore the graveyard, the spirits' laughter echoing through the mist. Tombstones seemed to shift and change position, their inscriptions appearing to writhe and dance in the moonlight. It was as if the spirits were inviting Samantha to join in their spectral revelry. As she moved further into the graveyard, Samantha began to feel an odd sense of camaraderie with the playful spirits. Their presence, while initially unnerving, had taken on a lighthearted quality. The spirits seemed to sense her genuine interest and embraced her as a fellow enthusiast in the mysteries of the afterlife. Samantha's camera captured some peculiar images, fleeting glimpses of transparent figures that appeared to be in the midst of a spectral game. The spirits darted among the tombstones, leaving behind trails of ectoplasmic energy that glowed in the moonlight. The graveyard's fog had transformed into a swirling dance of spectral energy, and Samantha found herself in the midst of a playful carnival of the afterlife. The spirits led her on a whimsical journey, guiding her to tombstones that bore their names in playful epitaphs, as if to introduce themselves. As the night wore on, Samantha's initial trepidation had been replaced by a sense of connection with the spirits. She felt as though they were sharing their world with her, offering glimpses into the afterlife and the unique sense of humor that persisted beyond death. The spirits played pranks, rearranging tombstones and causing leaves to dance in eerie patterns. Samantha laughed along with them, feeling a profound sense of joy and camaraderie. It was as if, for one magical night, the thin line between life and death had been blurred. But as the night reached its darkest hours, the playful spirits gathered around one particular tombstone. The inscription bore the name of a child who had passed away long ago, and the spirit's demeanor shifted from playful to somber. With solemn voices, the spirits shared their stories with Samantha. They spoke of their lives and the memories that lingered in the graveyard, each one recounting a tale that tugged at her heartstrings. She realized that, even in death, the spirits had retained their humanity, their emotions, and their stories. Samantha's journey through the graveyard had transformed from a night of curiosity into a profound encounter with the afterlife. The playful but mischievous spirits had guided her, not only through their spectral pranks but through the stories of their past. As dawn approached, the fog began to lift, and Samantha realized that her time with the spirits was coming to an end. She bid them farewell, promising to return one day and continue their shared journey. The spirits, with a sense of satisfaction, disappeared into the mist, leaving Samantha alone in the graveyard. As she made her way back to the town, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that she had experienced something truly extraordinary. The graveyard had been a place of mystery and humor, a testament to the enduring sense of the afterlife's sense of humor and the thin line between life and death. The small town's graveyard, once a place of quiet repose, would forever hold a special place in Samantha's heart. It was a place where she had laughed, shared stories, and experienced the profound connection between the living and the dead, all on a fog-covered Halloween night. Title: The Chilling Carnival Prophecy. On a sinister Halloween night, the fog-enshrouded carnival had descended upon the small town, casting an ominous shadow over the festivities. The air was thick with eerie anticipation, and the sinister atmosphere hung like a heavy veil. Ethan, a curious teenager with a penchant for the mysterious and unknown, couldn't resist the allure of the carnival. The stories of its malevolent fortune-teller had intrigued him, and he was determined to uncover the truth behind the carnival's dark reputation. As he wandered through the carnival grounds, the fog seemed to cling to him like an oppressive shroud, and the unsettling laughter of carnival goers echoed in the distance. The fortune-teller's tent, adorned with crimson drapes and mysterious symbols, beckoned him like a siren's call. Ethan entered the tent, the air inside thick with incense and an uncanny sense of foreboding. The fortune teller, an enigmatic figure with piercing eyes, welcomed him with an unsettling smile. She beckoned him to sit, and her bony fingers traced the lines of his palm. Ethan was skeptical, but as the fortune teller began to speak, her words sent a shiver down his spine. She revealed details about his life that he had never shared with anyone, secrets and fears that he had kept hidden. The atmosphere in the tent grew increasingly tense, and Ethan felt as though he had entered a realm of the supernatural. As the fortune teller's revelations continued, they became more and more chilling. She spoke of a dark fate that awaited him, a consequence of his unyielding curiosity. The carnival itself, she claimed, was a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred on Halloween night, and he had ventured into its web of deceit. Ethan's skepticism began to waver as the fortune teller predicted dire events, each one more unsettling than the last. The air grew colder, and the incense seemed to twist and dance in the air, taking on eerie shapes and forms. The carnival goers outside had fallen silent, as if they too were drawn into the fortune teller's prophecy. The sinister atmosphere in the tent had become almost suffocating, and Ethan felt a growing sense of unease. He demanded to know how the fortune teller could possibly know these things about him. But her only response was a cryptic smile and a whispered chant that sent shivers down his spine. With a sense of dread, Ethan rose from his seat, intent on leaving the tent. But as he tried to step outside, he realized that he was trapped. The entrance had vanished, replaced by a crimson curtain that seemed to ripple like blood. Panic set in as Ethan realized he was entangled in a malevolent web of fate. The fortune teller's words had become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the carnival had transformed into a nightmarish realm of the supernatural. The fog outside had thickened, obscuring the carnival grounds in an impenetrable darkness. Ethan's attempts to escape were futile. The tent seemed to stretch and contort, becoming an endless labyrinth of crimson drapes and mirrors that distorted his reflection. The atmosphere grew even more foreboding, and the air was filled with whispers that seemed to come from all directions. As the night wore on, the fortune teller's prophecy continued to unfold with a relentless sense of inevitability. Ethan's every move seemed to lead him further into the carnival's dark realm, and he began to realize that the fortune teller's words were shaping his destiny. The chilling atmosphere in the tent had become an inescapable nightmare, and Ethan was left with a choice: to accept his fate or to defy it. With a growing sense of determination, he refused to be a pawn in the fortune teller's game. He would tempt fate and challenge the sinister forces that had ensnared him. In a shocking twist, Ethan confronted the malevolent fortune teller, demanding to know the price of his curiosity and the truth behind the carnival's dark reputation. The fortune teller's eyes gleamed with a sinister intensity, and she revealed her own dark secret. She had made a pact with the supernatural forces that inhabited the carnival, offering her own soul in exchange for the power to reveal the fates of those who dared to venture into her tent. But now, she sought to ensnare Ethan and transfer her curse onto him, so she could escape her own grim destiny. Ethan's battle against the malevolent fortune teller reached its climax, a desperate struggle for control over his own fate. The tent seemed to warp and contort, its crimson drapes swirling like a vortex of malevolence. With a final, defiant act, Ethan shattered the mirrors that lined the tent, each one representing a different aspect of his fate. The carnival's supernatural hold over him began to wane, and the fortune teller's power crumbled. As the tent unraveled, the fog lifted, revealing the carnival grounds bathed in the pale light of dawn. The sinister atmosphere had dissipated, and the carnival goers outside seemed to awaken from a collective trance. Ethan, battered but resolute, emerged from the tent, having defied the malevolent forces that had ensnared him. The fortune teller, her curse broken, had vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only a lingering sense of foreboding. As Ethan left the carnival grounds, he couldn't help but ponder the consequences of his curiosity. The carnival had been a place where the supernatural and the living converged, and he had ventured into its treacherous depths. The price of his defiance had been steep, but he had emerged with a newfound understanding of the thin line between life and death, and the perils of tempting fate. The sinister, fog-enshrouded carnival would forever remain a place of mystery and darkness, a testament to the price of curiosity and the chilling encounter with a malevolent fortune teller on Halloween night. Title: The Haunting of Hollow Manor. On a sinister Halloween night in a fog-shrouded town, where the twisted branches of ancient trees clawed at the sky and shadows danced eerily in the moonlight, a desolate mansion known as Hollow Manor loomed. Its decaying walls whispered tales of the tormented souls that had once called it home, and the townsfolk dared not venture near it. Among them was Sarah, a curious teenager with a thirst for adventure, who couldn't resist the lure of the supposedly haunted house. The legend of Hollow Manor told of the tragic past of the mansion and its enigmatic caretaker, Mr. Johnson. Sarah, with her heart pounding and flashlight in hand, ventured closer to the mansion's ominous facade. Her footsteps echoed on the cobblestone path leading to the creaking, weathered door. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as Sarah pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit, dust-laden foyer. The air was icy, and the smell of decay lingered. She couldn't resist the urge to explore further. As she ventured deeper into the mansion, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was not alone. Mysterious sounds echoed through the mansion, unsettling Sarah as she navigated its labyrinthine hallways. Phantom footsteps seemed to taunt her, and eerie whispers danced on the edge of her hearing. Was it the wind, the house settling, or something more sinister? In one of the grand parlors, Sarah stumbled upon a tattered portrait hanging on the wall. The image depicted a family, once full of life and happiness. Their eyes, however, held a hint of sorrow, as if the very essence of their existence had been drained. The faces in the portrait seemed to follow her, and she shivered. Continuing her exploration, Sarah discovered a hidden staircase leading to a foreboding cellar. With each step she descended, the temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. She reached a crypt-like chamber adorned with ancient symbols etched into the walls. In the center of the room stood an ornate, gilded mirror. As Sarah gazed into the mirror, her reflection began to distort, revealing a nightmarish vision of the mansion's past. She saw the family from the portrait, forever trapped in the mirror's cursed embrace, their anguished faces pleading for release. Among them was Mr. Johnson, the caretaker, who was revealed as the architect of their torment. Suddenly, the room echoed with anguished cries, and the spirits of the trapped souls swirled around her. They were restless, seeking retribution for their suffering, and Sarah could feel their sorrow and anger. Panic welled up within her as she realized the true horror of Hollow Manor. In her desperation, Sarah clutched her flashlight, hoping to find a way to free the tormented souls. The beam of light revealed an old, ornate key on a dusty table. She took the key and rushed back to the mirror, her heart racing. With trembling hands, she inserted the key into a hidden keyhole within the mirror's frame. As she turned it, a blinding flash of light engulfed her. When the light faded, the mirror shattered, and the spirits were released with a collective wail that reverberated throughout the mansion. The weight of the past had been lifted, and Hollow Manor fell silent once more. Sarah had freed the tormented souls from their eternal prison. She emerged from the mansion, feeling a sense of closure and relief. The curse that had hung over the town for generations was finally broken. But as she looked back one last time, she saw the faintest smile on Mr. Johnson's face in the ruined mirror frame. His enigmatic, ghostly figure faded into the night, leaving Sarah with a lingering unease. Had she truly broken the curse, or had she merely added another chapter to the mansion's dark history? As she walked away from Hollow Manor, the fog swallowed the old mansion, and the moonlight cast eerie shadows on the decaying walls. Sarah couldn't help but wonder if the past truly could be laid to rest, or if the haunting of Hollow Manor would continue to echo through the ages, a tale of curiosity and consequences that would chill the hearts of those who dared to enter its cursed halls. Title: Whispers from Beyond. On a chilling Halloween night, the ancient graveyard stood silent beneath the pale glow of the moon. The centuries-old tombstones bore witness to countless tales of the departed, and their presence lingered in the air, carrying the weight of history and secrets. Among the living who dared to venture into the heart of this ghostly realm was Emma, a young history enthusiast with a yearning for the past. Emma's fascination with the stories of the deceased had brought her to this eerie place. Armed with an old, leather-bound book of incantations she had found in her late grandmother's attic, she had come to the graveyard in search of a connection to the spirits of the past. Little did she know that her actions would awaken something far more sinister. As the clock struck midnight, Emma stood alone among the moss-covered tombstones, the book clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The air grew heavy with anticipation, and a sense of foreboding settled in her chest. The ancient words on the pages seemed to pulse with power, waiting to be spoken. With a deep breath, Emma began to recite the incantation, her voice trembling in the silence of the night. The words seemed to echo through the graveyard, and a frigid breeze rustled the leaves of the gnarled trees. The moonlight danced on the tombstones, casting eerie shadows that seemed to reach out to her. Just as Emma finished the incantation, the world around her shifted. The temperature dropped, and the very ground beneath her seemed to tremble. In the moon's ethereal glow, a ghostly apparition materialized before her. It was a figure dressed in tattered, centuries-old garments, its features obscured by an otherworldly mist. The spirit's eyes, however, shone with an otherworldly, haunting light. They locked onto Emma with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. The atmosphere grew ominous as the apparition slowly approached, its footsteps barely making a sound on the dew-covered grass. Emma's curiosity had become a chilling reality, and she couldn't tear her gaze away from the spirit. She had yearned for a connection to the past, but this was something she could never have anticipated. The ghostly figure extended a transparent hand towards her, and a voice, as cold and distant as the grave, whispered through the night. "Help me find peace," it implored, the words resonating in the very core of Emma's being. Before she could respond, a burst of spectral energy surged from the apparition, enveloping her in an icy embrace. She felt herself transported to another realm, one that straddled the boundaries between life and death. The world was an eerie reflection of the graveyard, filled with mist and shadow. As Emma navigated this ghostly realm, the apparition, now a constant presence by her side, led her through a series of harrowing experiences. They wandered through spectral memories of the past, witnessing moments of love, despair, and tragedy that had long been forgotten by the living. But as Emma continued her journey with the restless spirit, she began to sense a malevolent force lurking in the shadows, watching their every move. Whispers of darkness and sorrow echoed in the mist, and Emma felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The apparition's pleas for peace grew increasingly desperate, as if it were running from something beyond the veil of the living. Emma's heart pounded, and her fear deepened as she realized that the spirit was not alone in this realm. There were others, lost and tormented, their presence twisting the very fabric of the ghostly world. As the ghostly pursuit continued, the boundary between life and death blurred further, and Emma realized that she had become entangled in a nightmarish existence. With each step, the ominous force drew closer, its shadowy presence inching towards them. Then, in the midst of this supernatural chaos, a shocking revelation unfolded. The apparition was not the innocent, long-lost soul it had seemed to be. It had been the malevolent force all along, luring Emma into its world, using her as a vessel to escape its own eternal torment. In a heart-stopping moment, the ghostly figure revealed its true, terrifying form, and it lunged at Emma, its eyes ablaze with malicious intent. In a final, desperate act, Emma recited the incantation once more, using the very book that had brought her to this nightmare. A blinding light erupted, and the apparition was banished back to the spectral realm, imprisoned once again. Emma was returned to the ancient graveyard, her body trembling and her heart heavy with the weight of her ordeal. The graveyard was silent once more, the moon casting an ethereal glow on the tombstones. She had toyed with the boundaries between life and death, and the consequences had been far more terrifying than she could have imagined. As she left the graveyard, the book of incantations clutched tightly in her hand. Emma couldn't help but wonder if the restless spirits would ever find peace, or if they would forever remain trapped in the ghostly realm. She had discovered the power of the supernatural, but it had come at a grave cost, leaving her with a chilling understanding of the boundaries between life and death, and a haunting tale to tell of the witching hour she had ventured into, never to forget. Title: The Labyrinth of Shadows. The full moon hung low in the Inkai sky, casting an eerie glow over the sprawling, isolated corn maze. The towering stalks formed a labyrinth, and it was said that once you entered, you would be forever ensnared by its sinister secrets. Among those who dared to navigate the maze was Jason, a skeptic who had scoffed at the legends surrounding it. Jason had gathered with a group of friends on that fateful Halloween night, drawn by their daredevil spirits and a desire to prove that the stories of the cursed corn maze were nothing more than superstition. Armed with flashlights and a sense of bravado, they entered the maze, unaware of the ancient evil that dwelled within. As the group ventured deeper into the maze, the atmosphere grew tense. The rustling of cornstalks seemed to whisper ominous secrets, and the moonlight filtered through the thick canopy of leaves overhead, creating eerie patterns on the ground. Their laughter faded into nervous glances, and a sense of unease settled upon them. The maze, however, was a treacherous labyrinth, and it wasn't long before they realized they were lost. Cornstalks towered around them, forming a suffocating wall of shadows. Panic set in as they retraced their steps, only to find themselves further entangled in the maze's sinister design. As they wandered through the ever-shifting passages, the ominous whispers grew louder, their voices dripping with malice. It was as if the very walls of the maze were taunting them, and their skepticism began to waver. Jason's once confident demeanor was replaced by a deepening sense of dread. The malevolent presence that lurked within the maze watched their every move, its ancient evil feeding on their fear. It was a force that had plagued the corn maze for centuries, a darkness born of forgotten rituals and long-buried secrets. Suddenly, a thick fog rolled in, obscuring their vision. Jason and his friends, now thoroughly disoriented, realized they were being stalked by a malevolent force. The fog seemed to conceal the presence, allowing it to move unseen and strike fear into their hearts. With each step, the malevolent force grew bolder. It created unnatural sounds, unnerving laughter, ghostly whispers, and the unsettling rustling of unseen figures in the corn. Jason and his friends were separated, their terrified cries fading into the abyss of the labyrinth. Jason stumbled upon a clearing, his heart racing, and turned to face the ominous presence. It materialized before him, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes that seemed to draw him into the abyss. Fear gripped him, and he felt the malevolent force probing his mind, exploiting his deepest fears and doubts. The ancient evil's chilling whispers taunted him, revealing long-buried secrets and insecurities. Jason's skepticism had wavered, and now it was being used against him. The malevolent force promised that they would never escape the cursed maze, that they would be forever trapped in its nightmarish depths. Desperation seized Jason, and he sprinted away from the sinister figure. The fog grew thicker, and the maze seemed to shift around him, its path leading him further into the heart of the labyrinth. He was alone and pursued by the relentless force that sought to shatter his skepticism and imprison him within the maze-haunted embrace. The malevolent presence continued to torment him, its sinister laughter echoing in the darkness. Jason's friends, scattered throughout the labyrinth, were enduring their own harrowing ordeals, their fear and doubt magnified by the evil that stalked them. In a desperate bid to escape, Jason pushed forward, his flashlight cutting through the fog and shadows. He could see glimpses of his friends, but they were trapped in their own nightmares, battling the malevolent force that sought to break them. As the hours passed, and the malevolent presence closed in, Jason's skepticism waned further. The boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurred, and he was forced to confront the terrifying possibility that the legends were true. The ancient evil was very real, and its sinister power was beyond his comprehension. In a final, desperate act, Jason recalled an old superstition. He retrieved a small piece of twine from his pocket and tied it around a cornstalk, creating a makeshift protective charm. With every step, he hung a new talisman, forming a barrier between himself and the malevolent force. The labyrinth of shadows seemed to protest, its oppressive presence weakening as Jason continued to ward it off with the makeshift charms. In a last-ditch effort, he called out to his friends, urging them to do the same. As they hung their own protective charms, the malevolent force howled in defeat. Its power weakened, and the fog dissipated, revealing the familiar path to escape. Jason and his friends, their skepticism forever shattered, rushed to the maze exit, their hearts pounding with a mix of terror and relief. As they emerged from the cursed corn maze, they looked back at the foreboding labyrinth, their breaths shuddering. The ancient evil had been vanquished, but the consequences of their skepticism had brought them to the brink of a nightmarish abyss. The malevolent presence would forever haunt their memories, a chilling reminder that some secrets were not meant to be challenged, and that the fear of the unknown could be far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The cursed corn maze would forever be a place of dread, a labyrinth of shadows where the boundaries between skepticism and the supernatural had been irrevocably shattered. Title: The Haunting of Hollow Carnival. On Halloween night, when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest, an eerie carnival ground lay in a forgotten corner of the town. The long-abandoned rides and attractions creaked and groaned in the pale moonlight, casting twisted shadows that danced menacingly. Among those who sought thrill and danger on this ominous night was Mia, a young thrill-seeker who had heard whispers of the spectral carnival's return. Drawn by the allure of the macabre and the promise of unparalleled terror, Mia approached the abandoned carnival with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Her footsteps on the cobblestone path seemed to echo through the desolation. As she ventured further, she felt an eerie presence in the air, as if the very atmosphere crackled with a malevolent energy. The carnival seemed to beckon her, its attractions and tents taking on a surreal and nightmarish quality. The once vibrant colors of the rides had faded into grotesque shades of decay, and the laughter of visitors had been replaced by a haunting, otherworldly chorus. Mia's curiosity and thrill-seeking nature led her deeper into the heart of the spectral carnival. She couldn't resist the pull of the macabre, even as a sense of unease settled over her. As she approached a tent, the entrance parted on its own, and a spectral performer emerged. The figure was dressed in a tattered, grotesque costume, with a twisted mask that concealed their identity. They extended a bony, gloved hand, beckoning Mia to enter the tent. The allure of the macabre was too strong to resist, and Mia ventured inside. The interior of the tent was a surreal and nightmarish world. Twisted funhouse mirrors distorted her reflection, and eerie, otherworldly music filled the air. The spectral performer led her through a maze of macabre and surreal performances, where contortionists bent their bodies in unnatural ways, fire eaters defied the laws of nature, and grotesque clowns danced with a disturbing grace. Mia was captivated and terrified in equal measure. The performances seemed to defy the boundaries of reality, and she couldn't look away. The allure of the macabre had ensnared her, and she felt herself drawn deeper into the nightmarish spectacle. As the performances continued, Mia began to realize that the spectral carnival was not just a place of eerie entertainment. It was a realm where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred. The performers were not of this world, and they seemed to exist in a perpetual state of torment. The ghostly audience watched the performances in silence, their faces twisted in anguish, their applause a mournful echo of a forgotten time. Mia felt a sense of dread wash over her as she realized that she was not a mere spectator. She had become a part of the terrifying performance. In a nightmarish climax, Mia found herself on a shadowy stage, surrounded by spectral performers. The ghostly audience watched with hollow eyes, their silent expectation weighing heavily upon her. The spectral performer who had led her into the tent reappeared, their grotesque mask concealing their expression. Mia's heart raced as she was handed a crimson rose, a symbol of the macabre world she had entered. The spectral performer held a twisted dagger, and with a sinister smile, they gestured for her to take the dagger in her trembling hand. The ghostly audience watched in anticipation, their silent approval echoing through the night. In the menacing and macabre atmosphere, Mia felt the weight of the night's allure and the consequences of her thrill-seeking desires. With the dagger in her hand, she was forced to become a part of the nightmarish performance, to enact a sinister ritual that would bind her to the spectral carnival for eternity. The ghostly audience's mournful whispers filled the air as Mia hesitated, the allure of the macabre pulling her into a nightmarish world she could never escape. The dagger hovered, its blade glinting ominously in the pale moonlight. The spectral performer's twisted smile grew wider, urging her to complete the ritual. In a final, heart-pounding moment, Mia made a fateful decision. She plunged the dagger into the ground, severing the spectral performer's hold on her. The tent and its nightmarish world shattered around her, fading into the darkness. As Mia emerged from the spectral carnival, her heart heavy with the cost of seeking thrills, she couldn't shake the haunting memory of the allure of the macabre. The carnival's eerie presence had ensnared her, but she had broken free, and the boundary between the living and the dead had been restored. The carnival grounds, once a place of torment, lay silent and abandoned once more, as if it had never existed. Mia had escaped the nightmarish spectacle, but the allure of the macabre would forever haunt her, a chilling reminder that seeking thrills could come at a cost too terrifying to bear. The spectral carnival's call would forever echo in her dreams, a haunting tale of the boundaries between the living and the dead, and the allure of the macabre that could ensnare even the bravest of souls. Title: Shadows of Halloween. The Johnson family had recently moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood. Their quaint house nestled among others with neatly trimmed lawns and picturesque gardens. They looked forward to celebrating their first Halloween in their new home, unaware of the secrets that lay hidden in the heart of their serene neighborhood. Halloween night arrived, and the Johnsons decorated their home with jack-o'-lanterns, cobwebs, and other spooky embellishments. The neighborhood buzzed with the excitement of children dressed as witches, superheroes, and ghouls, going door to door for tricks and treats. As the sun dipped below the horizon, and the moon cast a pallid glow over the neighborhood, the Johnsons prepared for the arrival of their first trick-or-treaters. But the night was different than they had imagined. The doorbell rang, and Mrs. Johnson opened it to find a group of children dressed in eerie, old-fashioned costumes. Their faces were unnaturally pale, and their eyes had a vacant, distant look. They held out their plastic pumpkins for candy, but their demeanor was unsettling, almost as if they were not of this world. Mrs. Johnson, attempting to hide her unease, placed candy in their bags and watched them silently as they departed. She couldn't help but feel a shiver of disquiet as they moved on to the next house. The night continued, and more groups of children arrived, each one more unsettling than the last. Mr. Johnson noticed that the children's costumes seemed to belong to a bygone era, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. As the evening wore on, he decided to investigate further. He discreetly followed the ghostly trick-or-treaters as they went from house to house. The children led him to a park at the center of the neighborhood, a place known for its quiet charm and picturesque gazebo. The park was illuminated only by the pale moonlight, casting eerie shadows on the cobblestone paths. The children gathered in a circle around the gazebo, and Mr. Johnson hid in the shadows to observe their strange behavior. To his horror, the children began to chant a haunting melody, their voices carrying an unsettling resonance. The words of the chant seemed to echo with a dark history, a sinister tale that had been hidden for generations. As they chanted, the ground beneath the gazebo began to tremble, and a spectral mist enveloped the children. They rose into the air, their forms twisting and contorting as they merged with the shadows. The gazebo seemed to come alive, its wood groaning and shifting as if it were a living, sentient entity. Mr. Johnson watched in terror as the spectral children's voices reached a crescendo. The gazebo transformed into a nightmarish portal, and from within it emerged ghostly figures of long-dead residents, each one taking on a ghastly form from their past. The neighborhood's dark history was revealed. It was a place where secrets had been buried, and where the living and the dead coexisted in an eerie, eternal Halloween night. The spectral residents, once trapped in a liminal existence, were now free to haunt the neighborhood and reenact their own dark pasts. With a chilling realization, Mr. Johnson understood that the Johnson family had unwittingly moved into a neighborhood of the supernatural, a place where Halloween night was eternal and where the past refused to rest. As he fled from the park, his heart pounding, Mr. Johnson knew that he had to warn his family. The sinister chant of the spectral children echoed in his mind, and the enigmatic secrets of the suburban life weighed heavily on his soul. Back at their home, he shared his harrowing encounter with Mrs. Johnson, who couldn't hide her disbelief. They decided to investigate further, researching the neighborhood's history and the chilling events that had led to its eternal Halloween night. Their findings revealed a hidden tale of tragedy and malevolence. Decades ago, a sinister event had occurred in the neighborhood, one that had been covered up and forgotten by the living. The neighborhood had become a liminal space where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred, and the past refused to be buried. The Johnsons realized that they were trapped in a nightmare, a neighborhood where Halloween night was eternal, and the spectral residents reenacted their own dark pasts. The spectral children were part of the enigmatic curse, forever bound to haunt the neighborhood. With their newfound knowledge, the Johnsons embarked on a quest to break the curse and free the spectral residents from their eternal torment. It was a journey fraught with danger and enigma, as they delved into the dark history of the neighborhood and sought a way to undo the malevolent chant. As Halloween night continued to stretch on, the Johnsons worked tirelessly to uncover the secrets of the past and break the curse that bound the spectral residents. They encountered spectral apparitions, and malevolent forces that sought to prevent them from unraveling the dark mystery. In a spine-tingling climax, they discovered the source of the curse and the means to end it. With a heart-pounding ritual, they chanted a counter-incantation that shattered the nightmarish portal, releasing the spectral residents from their eternal Halloween night. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the neighborhood's eerie atmosphere dissipated. The spectral children vanished into the shadows, and the neighborhood returned to its serene, peaceful existence. The Johnsons had broken the curse, and they had brought an end to the eternal Halloween night. As they watched the neighborhood return to normal, they couldn't help but wonder about the enigmatic secrets of suburban life, the fear of the unknown, and the cost of uncovering the past. Their Halloween night had been an unforgettable journey into the enigmatic and the supernatural, and they would forever carry with them the spine-tingling tale of Shadows of Halloween. Title: Whispers of the Hollowed Tree. Deep within a dense, shadowy forest, where gnarled trees reached their skeletal branches towards the full moon, an aura of foreboding and ancient secrets enveloped the landscape. Mark, a nature enthusiast with an insatiable curiosity, had always been drawn to the mysteries of the wilderness, but he was about to discover that some enigmas were better left untouched. One ominous night, as the moon cast an eerie glow over the dark woods, Mark ventured deep into the heart of the forest. He had heard whispers of a forbidden hollowed tree, an ancient and gnarled giant that stood in solitary isolation. Legends spoke of a vengeful spirit trapped within, and an unspoken rule among the locals was never to approach it. But Mark's curiosity was his undoing. The gnarled tree loomed before him, its massive roots winding into the earth like serpents. It was a sight of ancient power, and he could not resist the pull of the unknown. Approaching the hollowed tree, Mark hesitated for a moment, aware of the legends that surrounded it. A sense of dread washed over him, but he cast it aside, determined to uncover the mysteries within. With a trembling hand, he reached out to touch the tree's grotesque, bark-covered surface. As Mark's fingers made contact with the tree, a shiver passed through him. The forest seemed to grow still, as if holding its breath. The very atmosphere appeared to thicken, and Mark felt an unnatural presence, a malevolent entity awakening from its slumber. The hollowed tree trembled, its dark opening gaping like a maw, and a chilling gust of wind rushed from within. The moonlight illuminated the interior of the tree, revealing a shadowy, spectral figure, its eyes hollow and soulless. The vengeful spirit had been released. Mark stumbled back, his heart pounding, as the malevolent entity emerged from the tree's depths. It was a being of darkness, twisted by ancient anger and hatred. Its presence was suffocating, and Mark could feel it probing his mind, feeding on his fears and doubts. The forest around them seemed to come alive with paranormal phenomena. Shadows danced in the moonlight, and eerie whispers filled the air, carrying the mournful voices of long-forgotten souls. Mark was trapped in a nightmare, and he knew that he had awakened a force that he could not control. The vengeful spirit, its hollow gaze fixed on Mark, reached out with spectral hands, its fingers like icy tendrils, and Mark could feel the malevolent entity's grasp tightening on his very soul. Panic surged within him as he realized that he was entangled in a nightmarish encounter that defied the laws of the natural world. In a desperate bid to escape, Mark turned and fled from the hollowed tree, the malevolent entity pursuing him with relentless determination. The forest was alive with eerie, supernatural forces, and Mark's mind was filled with haunting whispers and surreal visions. As he raced through the gnarled trees, branches seemed to reach out for him, their thorny fingers tearing at his flesh. The moonlight cast grotesque, ever-shifting shadows that seemed to take on monstrous forms. The vengeful spirit's malevolent laughter echoed through the darkness, and Mark could feel its presence closing in. In a heart-pounding climax, Mark stumbled upon an ancient, long-forgotten shrine hidden deep within the forest. It was a place of long-lost rituals, a sanctuary of the supernatural. With trembling hands, he desperately recited an incantation he found inscribed on the shrine, hoping to banish the malevolent entity that pursued him. As the incantation left his lips, a blinding light erupted, and the malevolent entity wailed in torment. The force that had pursued him was banished, returning to the hollowed tree from which it had been released. The ancient spirit was once again trapped within the gnarled giant. Mark, his body bruised and his mind haunted, emerged from the forest, his heart heavy with the consequences of his curiosity. The hollowed tree stood silent and ominous in the moonlight, a sentinel of ancient secrets that could never be unraveled. As Mark walked away from the forest, he couldn't help but ponder the enigmatic mysteries of the natural world and the power of ancient spirits. He had ventured into the darkness and unleashed a malevolent force, and in the end, he had discovered that some secrets were better left untouched. The whispers of the hollowed tree would forever haunt his memory, a chilling tale of the consequences of disrespecting nature and the enigmatic power of ancient spirits. Title: Dance of the Unearthly Masquerade. In a world long forgotten by time, within the decaying walls of a grand, abandoned mansion, an exquisite ballroom lay in eerie slumber. Its opulent chandeliers, once ablaze with light, now hung in silence, their candles reduced to mere stubs. The grandeur of the past had given way to haunting stillness. Olivia, a passionate historian with an insatiable curiosity, was drawn to the mansion's secrets. With candlelight flickering in her hand, she stepped into the abandoned ballroom. The air was heavy with the scent of aged wood and faded memories, and the space was infused with a sense of elegant yet eerie beauty. As she wandered through the room, Olivia's fingers brushed against the dusty remnants of the mansion's opulent past. The faded wallpaper depicted scenes of grand masquerades and ethereal dances, but the grand ballroom was far from empty. In the glow of her candlelight, Olivia discovered a peculiar scene that defied the logic of time. The ballroom had come to life with spectral masqueraders, their elegant costumes draped in a kaleidoscope of colors. They moved with a grace that seemed to defy the laws of the living. The ethereal dancers swirled around the ballroom, their masks revealing only their eyes, which glowed with an otherworldly light. Olivia watched in awe as they moved in eerie unison, their steps silent, their presence hauntingly beautiful. Drawn into the mystique of the unearthly masquerade, Olivia found herself entranced. The spectral dancers seemed to beckon her with their hollow gazes, and she couldn't resist the allure of the supernatural. She became a part of the dance, her candlelight joining the ghostly illumination of the ballroom. The dance continued, elegant and chilling, as the spectral masqueraders twirled around Olivia. Their movements were seamless, their presence haunting. It was as if they were frozen in a dance that had transcended time, a ghastly celebration of the past. As Olivia moved with the ethereal dancers, she felt an uncanny connection to the mansion's history. She sensed that the masquerade was more than a mere apparition. It was a glimpse into a world long forgotten, a portal to the grandeur of the past. But as the dance reached its climax, Olivia realized that the unearthly masquerade held a chilling revelation. The spectral dancers were not mere apparitions of the past. They were trapped souls, forever bound to the grand ballroom. The elegance of their dance concealed the torment of their existence. Desperation seized Olivia as she tried to break free from the relentless dance, but the spectral masqueraders held her in their icy grasp. Their hollow gazes revealed the anguish of their plight, and Olivia understood that she was now a part of their eternal dance. In a heart-pounding moment, she called upon her historian's knowledge, seeking a way to release herself from the unearthly masquerade. She recited a forgotten incantation, a plea for release from the spectral dance, and the ethereal dancers wailed in torment. With an ethereal burst of light, the grand ballroom transformed. The once elegant masquerade now dissolved into darkness, its beauty tainted by the torment of the trapped souls. Olivia's candlelight, flickering with an eerie brilliance, cast long shadows over the ballroom. The mansion's secrets were unveiled as Olivia confronted the chilling truth. The grand ballroom had once hosted a real masquerade, a place of decadent revelry and unspoken intrigues. The ethereal dancers had been trapped in a never-ending dance, their souls bound to the grandeur of the past. With a heavy heart, Olivia left the grand ballroom behind, its elegant yet eerie beauty forever etched in her memory. The allure of the supernatural had brought her into a world where the past came to life, but it was a world of eternal torment, a ghastly dance of the spectral masqueraders. As she stepped out of the abandoned mansion and back into the world of the living, Olivia couldn't help but ponder the enigmatic allure of the past and the consequences of her curiosity. The dance of the unearthly masquerade would forever haunt her, a haunting tale of the grandeur of the past and the eerie beauty of the supernatural. Title: Whispers of the Ghostly Tides. On a desolate beach, where the fog clung to the shores and the moon cast an eerie glow on the restless waters, David, a seasoned fisherman, ventured out into the mysterious night. The salt-tinged air was thick with foreboding, and the chilling silence of the beach stretched far into the distance. As he trudged through the damp sand, David came upon a haunting sight, a spectral shipwreck. The ancient vessel lay half buried in the shore, its time-worn timbers jutting out of the ground like skeletal remains. The fog embraced the shipwreck, as if the sea itself had given birth to this ghostly relic. Drawn by an irresistible curiosity, David approached the spectral ship. Its rigging was tattered, and its mast seemed to reach for the moon. The deck, covered in slippery seaweed, creaked with the echoes of long-lost souls. The ship had an otherworldly aura, a phantom from the depths of the ocean. As he stood before the ghostly ship, David heard whispers in the air, a mournful chorus carried by the restless winds. The whispers seemed to come from within the ship, and he couldn't discern their origin. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as the ethereal voices enveloped him. It was then that David saw them, the ghostly crew of the ship, their spectral forms emerging from the shadows. Their eyes were hollow voids, and their faces held a mournful expression. They were the souls of lost sailors, trapped in a watery purgatory. The ghostly crew began to move with an eerie synchrony, as if they were still bound by their duties aboard the cursed vessel. Their movements were silent, their footsteps leaving no imprint on the damp sand. David watched in awe and terror as they enacted a haunting maritime ordeal, their ghostly presence a chilling reminder of the curses of lost sailors. In a heart-pounding moment, one of the spectral sailors extended a bony hand toward David, as if inviting him to join their cursed crew. The whispering winds seemed to call his name, and a dread-filled realization seized him. This spectral ship was a portal to another world of maritime torment. With a trembling heart, David turned to flee from the ghostly ship, but the spectral crew followed him with relentless determination. They moved with an unnatural speed, their hollow gazes fixed on him. The sound of the crashing waves seemed to merge with their mournful wails. David's escape became a desperate race against time and tide. He ran along the desolate beach, his breath ragged, his heart pounding. The ghostly sailors were always at his heels, and the haunting whispers of the sea filled his ears. In a heart-pounding climax, David found himself cornered by the restless waves, with the spectral shipwreck on one side and the ghostly crew on the other. It was a watery showdown, a maritime ordeal that would determine his fate. As the ghostly sailors closed in, David reached deep within himself and remembered the tales of his ancestors, the fishermen who had braved the unpredictable tides. With a final, desperate act, he cast a net into the restless sea, summoning the strength of the ancient mariners. The net seemed to come alive, its cords entwining the spectral sailors, binding them with a luminous, watery glow. The ghostly crew wailed in torment, their forms dissolving into the very sea they had once sailed. With the spirits of the lost sailors banished, David watched as the spectral shipwreck crumbled into the sands, its curse broken. The ghostly vessel returned to the depths of the ocean, its ethereal presence fading into the night. David, drenched in seawater and trembling with the memories of the spectral ordeal, left the desolate beach behind. The haunting whispers of the sea would forever echo in his dreams, a chilling tale of the mysteries of the ocean and the curses of lost sailors. As he returned to the world of the living, David couldn't help but ponder the enigmatic allure of the sea and the consequences of venturing into the watery realms of the unknown. The whispers of the ghostly tides would forever haunt his memory, a haunting tale of the mysteries of the sea and the enduring power of ancient mariners. Title: The Elegy of the Haunting Melody. On a chilling Halloween night, in the heart of an old, decrepit theater, a pallid moon cast an eerie glow on the aging facade. Sophie, a talented violinist with dreams of musical greatness, had been drawn to this forsaken place by an insatiable curiosity that would lead her into the embrace of a malevolent entity. The theater, shrouded in a cloak of melancholic memories, stood as a relic of bygone performances. Its once grand stage, now tattered and worn, had hosted countless artists who had left their echoes within its dilapidated walls. Sophie, carrying her violin like a torch, ventured into the forgotten theater. The musty air hung heavy with the weight of time, and cobwebs clung to the ornate balconies like forgotten veils. The chilling atmosphere did little to deter her, as the allure of the forgotten theater held her in its spectral grasp. As she ascended the creaking stairs to the stage, Sophie felt a haunting presence, a malevolent musical entity that seemed to lurk in the shadows. She brushed it aside, determined to fulfill her ambition to compose a piece that would etch her name into the annals of music history. With her violin in hand, Sophie began to play a hauntingly beautiful melody, her notes dancing through the desolate theater. The music was ethereal, evoking a sense of longing and despair, as if the very essence of the theater's tragic past had been woven into her composition. The theater responded to her music. As the melancholic notes filled the air, the shadows deepened, and a ghostly figure emerged on the stage. It was the malevolent entity, a spectral conductor, who seemed to beckon to Sophie with a bony hand. Intrigued and enticed by the haunting presence, Sophie continued to play, her music merging with the eerie sounds of unseen instruments. The spectral conductor guided her, his movements fluid and entrancing, as if he were leading an otherworldly orchestra. As the music reached a crescendo, the audience from the theater's distant past seemed to materialize in the balcony. Their ghostly forms watched in silence, their eyes hollow and void of life, as Sophie played on, oblivious to the spectral audience that had gathered. The theater had come alive with eerie music, a performance that transcended the boundaries of the living and the dead. Sophie's ambition had led her to the heart of the supernatural, and the malevolent entity's presence grew stronger, its sinister influence reaching deep into her soul. With a sudden realization, Sophie understood that her ambition had come at a chilling cost. The haunting melody had not only conjured the malevolent entity but had also ensnared her in an otherworldly performance from which she could not escape. The spectral conductor's movements grew more frantic, his spectral orchestra playing with a malevolence that mirrored his own. The theater's audience, their ghostly gazes fixed on Sophie, seemed to feed on her artistic energy, sapping her vitality with each haunting note. Desperation seized Sophie as she tried to break free from the spectral performance. The haunting melody had become a curse, its ethereal beauty masking the sinister intent of the malevolent entity and the ghostly audience. In a heart-pounding climax, Sophie realized that she had to reclaim her music and break free from the malevolent entity's grasp. With every ounce of her artistic strength, she played a counter-melody, a composition that fought back against the haunting melody that had ensnared her. As the counter melody resounded through the theater, the malevolent entity and the spectral conductor wailed in torment. The ethereal audience dissolved into the shadows, their ghostly gazes vanishing into the abyss. With a final, haunting note, the malevolent musical entity was banished, and the haunting melody faded into silence. The old, decrepit theater stood in eerie stillness, its malevolent presence exorcised by Sophie's artistry. Sophie, her violin cradled in her trembling hands, left the forsaken theater behind. The allure of artistic ambition had brought her into a world where music transcended the boundaries of the living and the dead. But it was a world of haunting consequences and malevolent entities. As she returned to the world of the living, Sophie couldn't help but ponder the enigmatic power of music and the cost of artistic ambition. The elegy of the haunting melody would forever haunt her memory, a chilling tale of the melancholic allure of the supernatural and the enduring power of artistic expression. Title: Reflections of the Cursed Mirror. In the heart of an old, dimly lit antique shop, where time seemed to stand still and shadows clung to every corner, Alex, an avid collector with a penchant for the macabre, stood before a peculiar, ornate mirror. The mirror's frame was adorned with intricate carvings, and its glass bore the weight of ancient secrets. Alex had always been drawn to the enigmatic, to the mysteries of the past. As Halloween night cast its eerie glow, the allure of the cursed mirror proved irresistible. The antique shop owner, a cryptic figure with eyes that seemed to see into the depths of the soul, presented the mirror to Alex with a knowing smile. The mirror was said to hold the tormented souls of the past, those who had gazed into it and become ensnared by its curse. Alex, unfazed by the ominous warnings, decided to make the mirror his own. With the cursed mirror now in his possession, Alex placed it in his home, a place where he could study its intricacies and unlock its hidden secrets. The mirror had an uncanny presence, and its glass seemed to hold a malevolent intelligence. On Halloween night, as the moon cast its spectral light through the windows, Alex found himself drawn to the mirror's eerie allure. He gazed into the glass, his reflection distorted and grotesque. As he looked deeper, the mirror seemed to ripple like water, and the tormented souls trapped within began to manifest. Spectral apparitions materialized in the mirror, their faces twisted with anguish and despair. They reached out from the glass, their spectral fingers brushing against the surface as if yearning for release. The mirror had become a portal to a world of restless spirits. Alex watched in horror as the tormented souls within the mirror began to speak. Their voices were a haunting chorus of anguish, their words a chilling lament for their fate. They revealed the mirror's curse, a curse that bound them to eternal torment, a curse that would now extend to Alex. Desperation seized Alex as he realized that the cursed mirror had ensnared him in its malevolent web. The spectral souls whispered to him, their voices like a cacophony of madness, and he could feel their torment seeping into his very soul. With a heart pounding in terror, Alex tried to break free from the cursed mirror, but the spectral souls held him in their spectral grasp. Their ghostly fingers seemed to pull him closer to the glass, as if they sought to drag him into their realm of eternal torment. The mirror had become a gateway to the world of the spectral, and there was no escape from the malevolent entity that lurked within. The cursed mirror's power was a force beyond his control, and it threatened to consume his very essence. In a heart-pounding climax, Alex realized that he had to confront the mirror's curse and the tormented souls within. With a determined will, he reached into the spectral world within the glass, his hand passing through the mirror's surface. As he touched the tormented souls, he felt their anguish and despair, but he also felt their yearning for release, their hope that someone could break the curse that bound them. With a surge of resolve, Alex recited an incantation, a plea for the trapped soul's liberation. The mirror shuddered, and the spectral souls wailed in torment as their curse was broken. With a blinding light, they were released from their spectral prison, their forms dissipating into the night. The cursed mirror, now bereft of its malevolent presence, was reduced to a mere antique. Alex, exhausted and haunted by the memory of the mirror's curse, left it behind. The consequences of materialism and his quest for the macabre had nearly cost him his soul. The reflections of the cursed mirror would forever haunt his memory, a chilling tale of the trapped souls of the past and the enduring power of the supernatural. As he returned to the world of the living, Alex couldn't help but ponder the enigmatic allure of the antique and the chilling consequences of his curiosity. The reflections of the cursed mirror would forever haunt his memory, a haunting tale of the consequences of materialism and the tormented souls of the past. Story: The Haunting of Blackwood Street. Dark clouds gathered ominously over Blackwood Street as Sarah and John, a young couple new to the town, pulled up to their new home, a charming, albeit slightly decrepit, old house. The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, casting a gloomy shroud over the quaint neighborhood. The house had an air of nostalgia about it, with ivy-clad walls, creaky floorboards, and the smell of time-worn wood. Despite its charm, something about it felt unsettling. "Isn't it perfect, John?" Sarah exclaimed, her enthusiasm barely masking the nervousness she felt. "It's a fixer-upper, all right," John replied, a forced smile on his face. They had no idea just how much fixing up it needed. Their neighbor, Mrs. Abigail, was a frail and mysterious elderly woman with haunting, pale blue eyes. She had lived on Blackwood Street for as long as anyone could remember. She stood at her window, her piercing gaze following the young couple as they entered their new home. Mrs. Abigail had seen many neighbors come and go over the years, but there was something about this house that had kept her rooted in place. As Sarah and John began to settle into their new life, strange occurrences plagued them. Doors that were locked would mysteriously open. Whispers echoed through empty hallways, and shadows danced in the corners of their vision. Sarah found an old diary hidden in the attic, written by a previous resident of the house. It was filled with cryptic entries that spoke of a malevolent presence in the very walls of the home. The diary mentioned the Wailing Lady, a nameless, tormented spirit bound to the house. She was a lost soul, seeking solace in her eternal sorrow. Sarah couldn't help but shudder as she read through the entries. One evening, as the wind howled outside and rain lashed against the windows, Sarah awoke to the sound of weeping. John was fast asleep beside her. She got out of bed, following the mournful cries through the darkened house. The wailing led her to the attic, where a spectral figure stood in the feeble moonlight that filtered through a dusty window. The figure, a woman in a tattered gown, appeared translucent, her eyes filled with a deep, sorrowful longing. She reached out towards Sarah, and Sarah could feel an overwhelming sense of despair emanating from her. "Who are you?" Sarah whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. The Wailing Lady's spectral lips quivered as if struggling to form words. She pointed towards a hidden compartment in the diary, an entry that Sarah had not yet read. Trembling, Sarah opened it. The entry told of the Wailing Lady's tragic fate. She had once been a resident of Blackwood Street, in the very house that Sarah and John now called home. Long ago, she had fallen in love with a man who promised her a future, but that man had betrayed her, leaving her heartbroken and alone. Consumed by grief, she had ended her own life in the very attic where her spirit now resided. Sarah realized that the Wailing Lady's pain was inexorably linked to the house, to its history, and to the betrayal that had led to her suffering. She also realized that she needed to find a way to set her free. The next day, Sarah and John sought out Mrs. Abigail, who had seen many tenants come and go, and she knew the secrets of the house. With reluctance, she told them the grim truth about their home's history. Blackwood Street had once been a town under the shadow of a terrible tragedy. 100 years ago, the townspeople had turned their backs on the Wailing Lady, allowing her to suffer in silence. They believed she brought misfortune to the town, and as a result, the curse of Blackwood Street had persisted. Sarah and John knew what they needed to do. They researched old rituals and contacted mediums. They were determined to set the Wailing Lady free and cleanse the house of its dark history. The night they performed the ritual was stormy, much like the night the Wailing Lady had first appeared. A circle of candles surrounded them in the attic, and the diary lay open. Sarah read aloud a passage from the diary, calling upon the Wailing Lady to release her pain and let go of the house. The room grew cold, and the candles flickered as the Wailing Lady appeared once more. Her weeping grew louder and more sorrowful, filling the room with anguish. "Please, be free," Sarah begged, tears streaming down her face. "You deserve peace." As if hearing her plea, the Wailing Lady's form began to dissipate. The mournful cries grew softer, and then she was gone. A profound silence filled the attic. The storm outside subsided, and an eerie calm descended over Blackwood Street. The curse that had hung over the house for a century was finally broken. The air felt lighter, and the house, once filled with dread, was now a place of peace. Mrs. Abigail, who had watched from her window, approached Sarah and John, her eyes no longer carrying that haunting look. "Thank you," she said with a faint smile. "You've given Blackwood Street a chance to heal." The young couple, now free from the sinister presence, could finally enjoy the charm of their home without the creeping sense of dread. They knew that in setting the Wailing Lady free, they had also released the town from its dark past. As the years went by, Blackwood Street flourished, and its once cursed house became a symbol of healing and hope. Sarah and John had not only saved their home but had also brought peace to the Wailing Lady. who could finally rest in eternal tranquility. Story: The Pumpkin Patch Phantoms. The air on Halloween night was crisp, and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the small town of Hollowsville. Children in colorful costumes paraded the streets, their laughter echoing in the night. But at the edge of town, a desolate pumpkin patch lay in darkness, shrouded in an unsettling stillness. Timmy, a curious 10-year-old with a mop of unruly hair, had always been drawn to the mysterious pumpkin patch. It sat at the outskirts of town, and every year it seemed more desolate and uncared for. The townsfolk whispered that the patch was cursed, and nobody dared to venture there after dark. But Timmy was different. He loved mysteries and couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. Dressed as a brave knight, he sneaked away from the vibrant Halloween festivities and made his way to the patch. The moonlight revealed withered pumpkins, their eerie grins seeming to come to life as Timmy approached. He reached out and plucked one, a particularly sinister-looking pumpkin with jagged, malevolent eyes and a wicked grin. Little did Timmy know that he had just awakened the phantoms tied to the pumpkins. The ground trembled, and the pumpkin patch came to life. From the earth, ghostly apparitions of children, long departed, emerged. Their hollow eyes were filled with anger, and they circled Timmy, whispering mournful tales of their fate. "You've taken our souls," one of the phantoms whispered. "You've chosen the cursed one," another hissed. Timmy was frozen with fear. He had unwittingly taken a cursed pumpkin, and now he was at the mercy of the vengeful spirits. The phantoms were the children who had been lured into the pumpkin patch years ago by Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, the patch's sinister owners. The Thompsons had promised endless treats in exchange for their souls, then left them trapped in a never-ending Halloween night. The phantoms were desperate for release. They told Timmy of the only way to break the curse: find the heart of the patch and perform a ritual under the full moon on Halloween night. Only then would the souls of the children find rest, and the curse on the patch would be lifted. With newfound determination, Timmy agreed to help the phantoms. The ghosts led him deep into the patch, where an ancient oak tree stood. Its gnarled branches twisted grotesquely in the moonlight. There, they explained, was the heart of the patch. It was the place where the Thompsons had made their sinister pact with the spirits. Timmy began the ritual, guided by the phantoms. He dug a hole at the base of the tree and placed the cursed pumpkin inside. He recited incantations, and the earth trembled once more. The roots of the oak tree came to life, coiling around the pumpkin. Timmy's heart pounded as the ground shook, and the ghosts chanted with him, their voices echoing in the night. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the air. It was Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who had sensed the disturbance in the pumpkin patch. They rushed to the oak tree, their eyes filled with anger and fear. "You meddling child," Mrs. Thompson screeched. The spirits of the trapped children surrounded Timmy, protecting him from the wrath of the Thompsons. The air crackled with tension as the forces of good and evil clashed. In a final, climactic battle, the phantoms released their pent-up anger, pushing the Thompsons back. The curse, which the sinister couple had maintained for so long, began to unravel. With one last incantation, Timmy sealed the pumpkin in the heart of the patch. The ground rumbled, and the curse broke, releasing the souls of the children who had been trapped for so long. The phantoms' ethereal forms began to fade away, but they did so with peaceful smiles, finally free. The Thompsons, on the other hand, were consumed by the curse they had inflicted upon others. Their forms twisted and contorted, and they were dragged beneath the earth, condemned to spend eternity with the malevolent pumpkins they had created. With the curse lifted, the pumpkin patch regained its former beauty. The wicked grins on the pumpkins softened, and they became a symbol of the patch's dark past. Timmy had redeemed the pumpkin patch, breaking the cycle of greed and betrayal that had plagued it for so long. As the sun began to rise, Timmy made his way back to town. He had saved the children and put an end to the dark legacy of the Thompsons. Halloween night in Hollowsville would never be the same. The air was now filled with a sense of wonder and magic, and the pumpkin patch, once cursed, was now a place of redemption and hope. Story: The Masquerade of Madness. Halloween night in the quaint town of Ravensbrook was a time of vivid costumes, mirthful laughter, and the mysterious allure of hidden identities. Emily, a teenager with a passion for adventure and a heart eager for mystery, was drawn to an exclusive event known as the Masquerade of Madness. Alongside her best friend, Lisa, they set out on an eerie, moonlit night to attend this enigmatic gathering. The venue was a sprawling mansion shrouded in ivy and shrouded in an eerie fog. Emily and Lisa, resplendent in their elegant gowns, entered the dimly lit ballroom. The room was bathed in an ominous crimson glow, its walls adorned with sinister, arcane symbols, and the air was thick with secrets. Attendees were clad in exquisite, ornate masks that concealed their true faces. "Isn't this thrilling?" Emily whispered to Lisa, her eyes gleaming with excitement. The partygoers moved in graceful waltzes and enchanting minuets, their masks granting them an air of anonymity. It was as if they were dancing in a grand illusion, where reality blurred and identities merged. Emily and Lisa couldn't help but feel a sense of disquiet as they navigated through the crowd. As the night unfolded, a sense of unease gnawed at them. The guests wore masks with eerie visages, phantoms, harlequins, and ghouls. Emily spotted a mask with hollow eyes and jagged teeth, while Lisa saw a mask that resembled a twisted jester's grin. Emily and Lisa decided to approach the enigmatic host, a figure cloaked in shadow, whose mask was an eerie representation of a raven in flight. He extended an invitation to dance, and they accepted, but with trepidation. The masked host guided them through a macabre, hypnotic waltz, where the line between pleasure and fear blurred. As they danced, they felt the chilling presence of hidden agendas, deceit, and malevolent intent. The enigmatic host's every step was precise, his movements graceful yet ominous, and his mask held an inscrutable gaze. "I don't like this, Emily," Lisa whispered, her voice quivering. Emily nodded in agreement, feeling the same unease. They had unknowingly stepped into a world where masks concealed not only faces but also secrets that threatened to unravel their reality. As the night deepened, Emily and Lisa ventured into a hidden chamber, guided by whispers from the other partygoers. There, they discovered a collection of masks, twisted, grotesque, and diabolical. It was as if the masks were a reflection of the darkest corners of human nature. One mask, in particular, drew their attention. It was a mask of betrayal, its expression filled with sorrow and deceit. As Emily held it in her hands, a shiver ran down her spine. She felt as though it was watching her, probing the depths of her soul. The shocking revelation came when they overheard a conversation between the enigmatic host and another guest. They spoke of a sinister ritual, the culmination of the masquerade of madness, where the masks would reveal the true nature of the guests. Emily and Lisa were horrified to learn that the masks they wore were not mere adornments. They held the power to unmask the darkest corners of their souls. Desperation gripped them as they realized that the sinister intentions of the host were now laid bare. They had to find a way to escape the masquerade before the night descended into madness. The chase through the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion was filled with tension and uncertainty. Their footsteps echoed like the heartbeats of the condemned as they sought an exit. Emily and Lisa's elegant gowns, once symbols of grace, were now heavy shackles that threatened to betray their escape. In the end, it was their wits and determination that led them to a concealed exit. With a burst of courage, they pushed their way out into the chilling night. As they emerged into the moonlight, they tore off their masks, the symbols of the masquerade, and cast them aside. The mansion, bathed in an eerie, malevolent glow, seemed to disintegrate into the fog. Emily and Lisa watched from a safe distance as it crumbled into the night, taking with it the secrets, deceit, and darkness that had pervaded the masquerade. They realized that the masks they had worn were not mere adornments but revelations of the hidden aspects of their own natures. They had narrowly escaped the madness that had threatened to consume them. As they made their way back to the safety of Ravensbrook, they shared a bond forged in the crucible of the masquerade. They knew that the masks we wear, whether in the form of physical disguises or hidden agendas, can reveal the deepest and darkest aspects of our souls. They had glimpsed the true nature of deceit and malevolence and emerged with a newfound understanding of the danger of the masks we all wear in the masquerade of life. Story: The Curse of the Forgotten Carnival. The sun dipped below the horizon on Halloween night, casting long shadows over the eerie, abandoned carnival grounds. The faded and tattered banners fluttered in the chilly wind, and the cracked, once colorful booths stood in disrepair. The carnival had once been a beacon of laughter and excitement, but it had fallen into disuse and disrepair, now serving as a ghostly reminder of its former glory. Alex, a seasoned paranormal investigator, stood at the entrance, his flashlight casting an uncertain beam into the darkness. He had heard tales of the forgotten carnival and its dark history, tales of restless spirits that still roamed the grounds. Tonight, he had come to uncover the truth. The carnival had been a Halloween tradition, a place of enchantment and wonder, but the dark allure of a particular magic show had ensnared the town, captivating them in a never-ending performance. The magician, a shadowy figure known as the illusionist, promised to make their darkest dreams come true. In exchange, he demanded their souls. As Alex delved deeper into the carnival, The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The air was filled with ghostly echoes of laughter and eerie, haunting music. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched by unseen eyes. He approached a decrepit carousel, its once vibrant animals now reduced to fading remnants of their former glory. As he looked at the empty seats, he imagined the specters of children who had once reveled in the thrill of the ride, now trapped in an eternal, twisted carnival. The creaking of a rusty Ferris wheel caught his attention, and he turned to see the empty cart swaying eerily in the wind. The laughter of phantom riders echoed through the night. The carnival had trapped them in its sinister grip, and they remained bound to its nightmarish reality. As Alex continued his investigation, he sensed the presence of something malevolent. He began to hear whispers that slithered through the night, sinister voices that taunted him. The spirits that had once enjoyed the carnival's offerings were not pleased with his intrusion. "The illusionist awaits you," the whispers hissed. Alex was drawn toward the sinister big top, its crimson and black stripes resembling a monstrous, hungry maw. The tent flaps swayed invitingly, despite the lack of wind. With each step, the atmosphere grew heavier, and the night itself seemed to warp around him. Inside, the big top was a grotesque theater of horrors. The abandoned seats were now occupied by spectral figures, their hollow eyes locked onto Alex. At the center of the stage stood the illusionist, a tall, ominous figure shrouded in darkness. The illusionist beckoned to Alex, his fingers gnarled and skeletal. "Join the show," he rasped, his voice dripping with malevolence. "I'm not here to join your cursed carnival," Alex retorted, his voice quivering. The illusionist's eyes glowed with a sinister light, and he raised a skeletal hand. The carnival itself seemed to come alive, the darkness coalescing into grotesque creatures. They advanced upon Alex, a nightmarish parade of horrors. With a deep breath, Alex raised his flashlight, and its beam illuminated the spectral figures, causing them to hiss and retreat into the shadows. Desperation gripped him as he realized that he needed to escape the cursed carnival, but the illusionist and his malevolent followers would not make it easy. As Alex ran through the twisted maze of tents and attractions, he heard the deranged laughter of the illusionist and the restless spirits that pursued him. The carnival seemed to shift and change, creating a nightmarish labyrinth. A distorted funhouse with mirrors that twisted and distorted his reflection stood in his path. The laughter of the carnival's victims filled the air, and the reflections seemed to come to life, taunting him with grotesque versions of himself. With every twist and turn, the carnival closed in around him. The spirits seemed to be growing stronger, their determination to imprison him evident. Alex needed to find a way to break the curse that bound them to the carnival. In a moment of clarity, Alex realized that the illusionist drew his power from the carnival's corrupted magic. To break the curse, he had to confront the malevolent magician. With newfound resolve, he navigated through the nightmarish labyrinth, determined to face the illusionist and free the trapped spirits. At last, he found himself back in the big top, where the illusionist awaited. The sinister magician hissed, "You cannot escape, for the carnival is now your prison." But Alex was undeterred. With his flashlight and a courage forged in the face of unimaginable horror, he approached the stage. The illusionist unleashed a barrage of dark magic, creating grotesque illusions and twisted specters. But Alex, armed with the light of truth, held his ground. He exposed the illusionist's true form, a wretched and withered creature, drained by the dark bargain he had struck. The carnival's malevolent grip began to weaken as its source of power waned. The spirits of the trapped victims, sensing their chance at freedom, converged upon the illusionist. With their collective strength, they overcame him, and the cursed carnival began to crumble. Alex, seizing the opportunity, escaped the disintegrating big top. The carnival, once a place of enchantment and dreams turned into nightmares, now faded into obscurity. The spirits were finally released from their torment, their anguished laughter and cries now silenced. The air was filled with an eerie calm, and the cursed carnival vanished, leaving nothing but the fading memories of its dark legacy. As Halloween night in Ravensbrück continued, the town's residents felt the lingering presence of the carnival, and the cost of entertainment gone awry. Alex had ventured into a nightmarish world, where the perils of obsession and the price of indulgence had almost claimed him. He had faced the darkness of the forgotten carnival and emerged with the understanding that some mysteries were best left unexplored. Halloween night in Ravensbrück would never be the same, as the town's secrets and fears were laid bare in the darkness of the cursed carnival. Story: The Witching Hour at Elridge Cemetery. On Halloween night, a chilling breeze rustled through the trees, and the full moon hung in the sky like a pale lantern. Elridge Cemetery, known for its eerie reputation, stood in silence. Its darkened tombstones and gnarled trees seemed to clutch at the veil between the living and the dead. The town's stories of ghostly sightings and paranormal occurrences were legendary, and tonight, Maria, a skeptical journalist, had come to unravel the truth. Dressed in practical attire and holding a notebook and flashlight, Maria ventured into the graveyard, determined to debunk the rumors and expose the tales as mere superstitions. The ghosts, she believed, were nothing more than tricks of the imagination. She moved through the rows of tombstones, her flashlight's beam cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with an uncanny stillness, and the quietness seemed almost unnatural. Maria chuckled to herself, her skepticism unwavering. Ghost stories are just that, stories, she muttered. But as the minutes ticked away, Maria couldn't help but notice the growing tension in the air. The shadows seemed to move on their own, and eerie whispers lingered on the wind. The night was alive with an unsettling energy, and Maria's skepticism began to waver. The clock struck midnight, and the witching hour descended upon Elridge Cemetery. It was then that Maria's flashlight flickered, casting eerie and elongated shadows that danced across the tombstones. She attempted to fix the flashlight, but it refused to cooperate, leaving her shrouded in darkness. In the stillness, Maria heard footsteps, a strange and hollow sound, like someone walking on old leaves. Panic welled up in her as she realized she was no longer alone. She squinted into the inky blackness, her heart pounding in her chest. From the darkness emerged a spectral figure, its form translucent and ethereal. Maria's breath caught as she witnessed the ghostly apparition. It was a woman in an antiquated gown, her face a mask of sadness. Maria's skepticism had waned, replaced by a creeping sense of dread. She found herself face to face with a ghost, a restless spirit of Elridge Cemetery. The spectral woman beckoned to her, her voice a faint whisper. "Unravel the secrets," the ghost implored. Maria's journalistic instincts took over. She approached the apparition cautiously, ready to question the spirit and uncover the truth. But what she found was a sadness that transcended the veil of death, a story of love and loss, and a curse that bound the spirits to the cemetery. The ghostly figure revealed that Elridge Cemetery had been a site of tragic events in the past. A century ago, a forbidden love had blossomed between a maid and the master of the grand estate, but society had torn them apart. In their despair, they made a desperate pact, cursing their love and binding their souls to the graveyard. They had become the guardians of Elridge, protecting its secrets and its restless spirits. The ghostly maiden led Maria to an ancient crypt, its door covered in ivy and decay. There, the spirits gathered for a seance, their voices echoing through the night. Maria watched in awe as the ghosts began to tell their stories, each more heart-wrenching than the last. Amidst the chorus of ethereal voices, Maria realized that the spirits were not the malevolent beings that the town had feared. They were souls trapped in a never-ending cycle of grief, their presence fueled by their desire to finally break the curse that bound them to Elridge. Maria had come to debunk the supernatural tales, but she now stood at the center of a paranormal revelation. The spirits sought redemption, a chance to be freed from their eternal vigil, and it was in her power to help them. As the seance continued, the spirits urged Maria to uncover the hidden history of Elridge Cemetery and to reveal the truth to the living. It was only through understanding and compassion that the curse could be broken. Determined to bring peace to the restless souls, Maria returned to the town and dug through archives and records. What she discovered was a long-buried tale of love, tragedy, and betrayal. The love story of the maid and the master had been suppressed and erased from the town's history, but Maria was determined to shed light on it. With her findings in hand, she returned to Elridge Cemetery and gathered the spirits. She shared their story, unearthing the truth that had been buried for so long. As she spoke, the ghostly figures began to fade, their spectral forms dissolving into the night. With each fading apparition, the curse was slowly lifted, and the cemetery seemed to sigh in relief. The tombstones, once oppressive, now bore an air of tranquility. Elridge Cemetery was no longer haunted by its dark past. Maria had helped the spirits find peace, and the town would no longer live in fear of its eerie legends. The moon began to wane, and the night lost its eerie glow. Maria watched as the spirits departed, their restless souls finally finding solace. Elridge Cemetery was no longer a place of dread but a reminder of the persistence of the past and the power of compassion to free even the most tormented souls. As Halloween night drew to a close, the town's perception of Elridge Cemetery shifted. The haunting stories that had once fueled their fears were now replaced by a deeper understanding and a sense of respect for the history that lay within its grounds. Maria's encounter with the spirits had left an indelible mark on her, a reminder that sometimes the line between the living and the dead was thinner than we dared to imagine. Story: The Shadows in the Cornfield. Halloween night had arrived, and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the rural town of Hollowvale. Jake and Amanda, a young couple in search of adventure, found themselves drawn to the desolation of an abandoned cornfield that had become a local legend. Stories of ghostly apparitions and sinister shadows had piqued their curiosity, and they decided to explore it for themselves. The cornfield stretched before them like an endless labyrinth, its rows of tall, withered stalks appearing as a sinister army. The night was thick with silence, and the only sound was the rustling of corn leaves in the wind. Jake and Amanda, hand in hand, ventured into the field with a sense of trepidation. The further they delved into the cornfield, the more disoriented they became. The rows of stalks seemed to stretch in all directions, making it difficult to discern their path. The moonlight, once their guiding beacon, was now obscured by the dense canopy of corn. Amanda tried to keep her composure, but her voice trembled as she spoke. "I thought this would be fun, Jake, but I'm starting to feel really lost." Jake squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, Amanda. We'll find our way out. Just stay close." As they continued to navigate the cornfield, the night seemed to grow darker, and a sense of claustrophobia closed in around them. The rows of corn felt like towering walls, and the world outside the field became an increasingly distant memory. The sense of isolation was overwhelming. They couldn't see beyond the stalks, and the eerie silence of the night pressed upon them. Amanda couldn't help but feel a growing unease, as if the very field itself was alive and closing in on them. In the distance, a faint whisper carried through the night, sending shivers down their spines. They strained to hear, their senses heightened by fear. The whisper grew louder, and they realized it was a soft, haunting melody like a lullaby sung by the wind. "I don't like this," Amanda said, her voice quivering. "It feels like we're being watched." But Jake dismissed her fears, attributing the eerie whispers to the wind and their own anxiety. They pressed on, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of fallen leaves beneath the cornstalks. As the night deepened, the shadows cast by the moonlight grew longer and more sinister. They danced and flickered, taking on the shape of grotesque figures that seemed to stretch toward Jake and Amanda. The couple felt an oppressive sense of being pursued, though they could never quite catch a glimpse of their pursuers. The whispers grew louder and more malevolent, as if the shadows themselves were mocking their fear. Amanda clung to Jake, her heart pounding. "We need to get out of here, Jake, now." But just as they turned to retrace their steps, the cornfield seemed to shift and change, its rows rearranging themselves like a living maze. Panic set in as they realized they were well and truly lost in a nightmarish labyrinth. The shadows, once distant, were now closer, stretching out from the cornstalks like skeletal fingers. The eerie lullaby was now a haunting melody that seemed to resonate within their very souls. Amanda's grip on Jake's hand tightened. "We can't stay here. We need to find a way out, Jake." Jake agreed, his own fear intensifying. They chose a direction and began to move, though they couldn't be certain if it was the way they had come. The whispers and shadows pursued them, growing louder and more menacing with each step. The darkness pressed upon them from all sides, and Amanda stumbled, falling to the ground. Jake helped her up, but as he did, the shadows closed in, their fingers reaching for her. The eerie melody crescendoed, becoming a deafening cacophony that filled their ears. Desperation fueled their flight through the cornfield. With each turn and each step, they felt the oppressive presence of the shadows. The darkness seemed to come alive, an entity that was determined to consume them. But just as hope seemed to wane, they stumbled upon a clearing within the field. In the center stood an old, crumbling scarecrow, its tattered clothing flapping in the wind. Without hesitation, Jake and Amanda embraced the scarecrow, hoping it would offer protection from the shadows. As the shadows closed in, the scarecrow seemed to come to life. It stretched out its arms, casting a protective shadow over the couple. The eerie melody that had haunted them now changed, becoming a defiant, ethereal tune that echoed through the night. The scarecrow's presence held the shadows at bay, and the couple's terror began to ebb. The darkness that had pursued them slowly retreated, its whispers fading into the night. As dawn approached, the shadows vanished entirely, and the cornfield took on a more familiar appearance. Jake and Amanda, shaken but alive, looked at each other with a newfound appreciation for their bond and their shared ordeal. They ventured out of the cornfield, leaving the shadows and the eerie whispers behind. The terror of the night had tested their relationship, but they emerged with a deeper understanding of their connection and the fragility of their existence. Halloween night in Hollowvale would forever be haunted by the memory of the shadows in the cornfield, a testament to the fear of isolation and the resilience of the human spirit when faced with the unknown. Story: The Curse of Ravenwood Manor. A chilling wind swept through the desolate town of Hollowvale, where an imposing structure known as Ravenwood Manor loomed on the outskirts. It was a mansion that had long been shrouded in a sinister reputation, its dark history whispered about in hushed tones. Daniel and Rebecca, a fearless paranormal investigation team, had come to uncover the truth behind the malevolent spirits that were said to haunt the mansion. Little did they know that their curiosity would unleash a night of terror. The moon hung low in the sky as the investigators stood before the grand entrance of Ravenwood Manor. Its shadowy silhouette seemed to stare down at them with an air of foreboding. Daniel adjusted the straps of his backpack, and Rebecca clutched her camera tightly, ready to document their findings. As they entered the mansion, the air grew thick and oppressive. The walls of Ravenwood Manor held the memories of countless dark deeds, and the rooms seemed to exude an eerie atmosphere. The creaking floorboards underfoot echoed through the mansion like a mournful cry. The investigators had heard tales of a forbidden room within the mansion, a place that had never been opened. They had come with the intention of unraveling the mystery and uncovering the truth. As they ventured deeper into the house, the oppressive ambience seemed to intensify. Rebecca whispered to Daniel, "This place gives me the creeps. Are you sure we should be here?" But Daniel's curiosity was insatiable, and he pushed forward. "We have to see it through. The truth about this place needs to be revealed." Their search for the forbidden room led them to a grand hallway with portraits of solemn-faced individuals lining the walls. Each figure seemed to watch them with eyes that followed their every move. At the end of the hallway, they discovered a heavy oak door, its surface etched with cryptic symbols and inscriptions. The door, they had been told, was the gateway to the forbidden room. With trembling hands, they pushed it open, revealing a room that had been untouched for centuries. Dusty furniture, faded tapestries, and aged books filled the chamber. But at the center of the room stood a sinister-looking mirror that seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. Rebecca felt a sense of dread wash over her. "This mirror, Daniel, it feels wrong. Like it's a doorway to something we can't comprehend." Daniel, however, approached the mirror with an intense fascination. As he gazed into its depths, he saw strange visions and ghostly apparitions. The room seemed to warp and shift around him, and he became entranced by the mirror's supernatural allure. The mirror's surface began to ripple, and Daniel's reflection transformed into a sinister doppelganger. It reached out from the mirror, grabbing Daniel's arm with a spectral hand. Panic overcame him as he realized he was being pulled into the mirror, his own reflection intent on replacing him in the physical world. Rebecca watched in horror as Daniel struggled to break free, his desperate pleas echoing through the chamber. With every ounce of her strength, she pulled him away from the mirror's grasp, causing the spectral doppelganger to retreat. The mirror's surface settled, returning to its eerie, pulsating calm. Shaken and terrified, Daniel and Rebecca realized they had unwittingly unleashed the malevolent spirits that had been trapped within the mirror. The supernatural entities, once confined to the glass, were now free to roam the mansion. As darkness descended over Ravenwood Manor, the investigators could hear the whispers of the spirits, their voices filled with bitterness and malice. The apparitions of long-deceased residents of the mansion appeared before them, their faces twisted in agony and despair. The spirits seemed to take pleasure in tormenting Daniel and Rebecca, subjecting them to a night of terror that tested the limits of their endurance. They were pursued through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors, each shadowy figure a reminder of the mansion's sinister history. Rebecca tried to capture the haunting events with her camera, but the images appeared distorted and twisted, reflecting the malevolent presence that surrounded them. The investigators had opened a doorway to the supernatural, and the consequences of their curiosity were devastating. With every encounter, the spirits grew stronger, their determination to claim the investigators' souls evident. Daniel and Rebecca were exhausted, their bodies and minds pushed to the brink. The mansion had become a nightmarish prison, and their escape seemed impossible. But as the spirits closed in, the investigators discovered a faint ray of hope. Within the forbidden room, the sinister mirror that had been the source of their torment still pulsed with supernatural energy. It was a conduit to the spirits' power, and it was the key to ending their reign of terror. With their last reserves of strength, Daniel and Rebecca approached the mirror. They confronted the malevolent spirits, demanding that they release their grip on the mansion and its inhabitants. The spirits, bound by the mirror's dark magic, had no choice but to comply. As Daniel and Rebecca channeled their willpower, the mirror's surface shattered, releasing a blinding burst of light that engulfed the room. The spirits screamed in agony as they were drawn back into the fractured mirror. With the spirits defeated, the oppressive atmosphere that had shrouded Ravenwood Manor lifted, and the mansion returned to a state of eerie stillness. The investigators emerged from the forbidden room, their bodies battered and their minds scarred by the night's horrors. As they left the mansion, the weight of the curse that had plagued Ravenwood Manor seemed to dissipate. The spirits had been returned to their spectral prison, and the mansion was now a place of silence, free from the malevolence that had haunted it for centuries. Halloween night in Hollowvale would always be remembered as the night when the curse of Ravenwood Manor had been lifted, a chilling reminder of the consequences of meddling with the supernatural and the price of curiosity. The investigators had confronted the malevolent spirits and survived, but the memory of that night would haunt them forever. Story: The Halloween Cabin. In the heart of a dense forest, shrouded in the chill of late October, stood a remote cabin that had long been abandoned. It was a place that locals spoke of in hushed tones, and superstitions surrounded it. On Halloween weekend, a group of friends sought a secluded retreat far from the trappings of civilization. They believed it would be an adventure filled with camaraderie, but they had no idea that the cabin held a malevolent force that would test their bonds and confront them with their darkest fears. The group consisted of Sarah, Mark, Lisa, and Ben, a close-knit circle of friends who had grown up together. They saw this getaway as a chance to escape the monotony of everyday life and create unforgettable memories. But as they approached the cabin, nestled amidst the towering trees, an unsettling sense of isolation began to creep over them. The cabin's facade was weathered and worn, its windows boarded up as if to keep something out, or perhaps to keep something in. Inside, cobwebs draped the corners, and a musty odor lingered in the air. The place had a sense of abandonment that sent a shiver down their spines, but they dismissed it as mere superstition. As night fell, they gathered around a flickering fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. But the warmth of their camaraderie couldn't dispel the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the cabin. Shadows danced on the walls, and the wind howled outside like a mournful wail. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Objects moved on their own, and eerie whispers echoed through the halls. The group members tried to dismiss these events as mere figments of their imagination, products of the eerie setting. But their unease grew with each passing hour. One night, as they settled into their sleeping bags, they heard footsteps echoing through the cabin. Sarah's eyes widened in fear. Did anyone else hear that? Mark shrugged it off, trying to maintain a facade of courage. Probably just some critter outside. Nothing to worry about. But as they lay in the darkness, the footsteps grew louder, closer. They realized that whatever was inside the cabin was neither critter nor figment of their imagination. Panic set in as they huddled together, their hearts pounding in unison. A malevolent force seemed to close in on them, a presence that delighted in their fear. It whispered dreadful promises and played tricks on their senses, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Lisa felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, and Ben heard a sinister voice whisper his name in the dead of night. With each unsettling event, their bonds began to fray. Suspicion festered within the group as they cast accusatory glances at each other. Trust, once their foundation, was now a fragile thread that threatened to unravel. The malevolent force fed on their paranoia, taking the form of their deepest fears. For Sarah, it appeared as a grotesque, faceless figure that taunted her with her most profound insecurities. Mark was confronted by the ghost of his deceased sister, a specter that accused him of abandoning her in her time of need. Lisa's childhood phobia of spiders manifested as a nightmarish swarm that crawled over her. And Ben faced the darkness of his own guilt, a relentless tormentor that reminded him of past wrongs. The cabin had become a place of torment, where the friends were confronted with their most profound fears and secrets. Betrayal and mistrust tore through the group, as each member questioned the other's motives and actions. In a desperate bid to confront the malevolent entity, they gathered together one night in the cabin's center. Their breaths trembled in the frigid air as they called out to the force that plagued them. The cabin seemed to come alive, its walls groaning and shifting. Shadows danced with malevolence, mocking the friends. The entity took shape before them, its form a grotesque amalgamation of their fears. It fed on their terror, its malevolence radiating through the cabin. With a chilling voice, it whispered, "I know your secrets. I know your darkest fears." Their unity had been shattered by paranoia and mistrust, and the entity reveled in their vulnerability. It demanded that they betray one another, that they expose their darkest secrets and tear each other apart. In the cabin's claustrophobic confines, their friendships crumbled, and they faced a nightmarish decision. But as they stood on the precipice of betrayal, their bond rekindled, and they realized the true nature of the malevolent entity. It thrived on their mistrust and division, and unity was their only defense. In an act of defiance, they chose to stand together against the darkness. With renewed determination, they confronted the entity, their unity forming a barrier against its malevolence. The cabin seemed to tremble, and the entity's form wavered and faltered. It let out an agonized wail and retreated into the shadows, vanishing into the inky blackness. The friends, having faced their darkest fears and confronted the malevolent force, emerged from the cabin forever changed. The bond that had been tested and nearly broken had been reforged through their shared ordeal. The malevolent entity, vanquished by their unity, had left the cabin, but its sinister memory would haunt their Halloween forever. As they left the cabin behind, they walked hand in hand, their friendships stronger than ever. The malevolent force that had sought to divide and conquer had underestimated the strength of their unity, and in the end, it had been defeated by the power of their enduring bonds. Halloween night in Hollowvale would always serve as a reminder of the horrors of isolation and the resilience of friendships that endured the darkest of trials. Story: The Cursed Costume Shop. On a gloomy October evening in the heart of Hollowvale, the town's cobbled streets were bathed in the eerie glow of jack-o'-lanterns. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows seemed to grow longer, enveloping the town in an air of mystery and foreboding. It was a night when the veil between the living and the supernatural was at its thinnest. Lily, a curious teenager with a penchant for adventure, found herself wandering down a desolate alleyway. It was there that she stumbled upon an unassuming storefront, its sign reading Wicked Wonders Costume Emporium. The shop appeared out of place, as if it had materialized from another era. Drawn by her insatiable curiosity, Lily pushed open the door and stepped inside. The shop's interior was a labyrinth of racks filled with costumes of every era, from bygone eras to fantastical realms. The proprietor, an enigmatic figure whose eyes seemed to hold the secrets of the universe, regarded her with a knowing smile. "Welcome to Wicked Wonders," he said in a voice that sent shivers down Lily's spine. "We have the perfect costume for anyone who dares to enter." Lily's eyes darted from costume to costume, her heart pounding with excitement. She had always been a fan of Halloween and relished the opportunity to find the perfect costume. The shop seemed like a treasure trove of possibilities. As she browsed the racks, her fingers brushed over a costume that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly allure. It was a beautiful, ornate dress that whispered promises of enchantment. Without hesitation, she selected it, eager to try it on. The shopkeeper assisted Lily in the fitting room, where she donned the costume. The moment she looked in the mirror, she was captivated by her own reflection. The dress transformed her into an ethereal beauty, a vision of grace and allure. She twirled, the fabric billowing around her like a ghostly presence. But as she gazed at herself, Lily began to notice a subtle change. Her skin grew paler, her eyes darker, and an eerie, haunting beauty overtook her. The costume seemed to meld with her very essence, and she realized with growing horror that she had been ensnared by its curse. Panicked, she tore at the costume, struggling to remove it, but it clung to her like a second skin. The shopkeeper's sinister laughter echoed through the room as he revealed himself to be a supernatural being, a collector of souls who traded beauty for a lifetime of servitude. "You wanted perfection, my dear, and now you shall be perfect for eternity," he taunted. Lily's cries for help were met with silence as the transformation was completed. She had become a living mannequin, a cursed beauty trapped within the walls of the costume shop. Her own reflection in the mirror grinned back at her, a sinister mockery of the vibrant teenager she had once been. As the days turned into weeks, Lily watched the world outside the shop's window with growing despair. She could see the Halloween festivities and the joyous laughter of the living, but she was forever imprisoned in the shopkeeper's twisted realm. The shopkeeper had collected the souls of many like Lily, each trapped within a costume, serving as a twisted reminder of their vanity and foolishness. As the Halloween season drew to a close, the shop's sinister purpose became clear. Each cursed costume represented another trapped soul, another prisoner in the emporium of horrors. Lily's existence within the cursed costume shop became a nightmarish routine. She would stand as a lifeless mannequin during the day, her soul trapped within the costume, while at night she would come to life, her beauty and allure heightened by the curse. It was a cruel irony, as she was forced to entice new customers into selecting the cursed costumes, ensuring that more souls would be added to the shop's collection. With each new customer, Lily's heart ached with guilt and desperation. She watched as others fell victim to the allure of the costumes, and she could do nothing to warn them of the shopkeeper's malevolent intent. She could only stand as a silent witness to the darkness that consumed them. But as Halloween night approached, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. A group of friends entered the shop, their laughter and camaraderie a stark contrast to the sinister atmosphere that permeated the place. Among them was a girl named Mia, whose genuine kindness and compassion seemed to shine through the darkness. Mia's gaze fell upon Lily, and a look of empathy crossed her face. She approached the cursed costume and whispered, "I know you're in there. I can see it in your eyes." Lily, her soul filled with longing for release, stared back at Mia, silently pleading for help. Mia, undeterred by the shopkeeper's warnings, reached out and touched the cursed costume. In that moment, a powerful force of magic enveloped the room. The curse that had bound Lily to the costume began to weaken, and she felt herself being drawn out of the fabric. Mia's determination and kindness had broken the curse's hold. The shopkeeper, sensing the impending loss of another soul, lashed out with supernatural fury. But Mia stood her ground, her compassion and selflessness acting as a shield against his malevolence. With a final burst of magic, the shopkeeper was banished, and the cursed costumes that had trapped so many souls lost their sinister allure. The Emporium of Horrors crumbled, and the trapped souls were released, their gratitude and relief palpable. As the cursed costume shop disintegrated into a pile of fabric and dust, Lily emerged, free from the malevolent curse. She embraced Mia with tears of gratitude, knowing that it was her kindness that had saved her from an eternity of torment. Halloween night in Hollowvale would always be remembered as the night when the cursed costume shop was vanquished, a chilling reminder of the price of vanity and the danger of making deals with the unknown. The shopkeeper's reign of terror had ended, and the trapped souls could finally find peace, thanks to the compassion and selflessness of one kind-hearted soul. Story: The Ghostly Game Night. On a chilly Halloween night in the quiet town of Hollowvale, a group of friends had gathered at Emily's cozy home to celebrate their favorite holiday. The scent of pumpkin-spiced candles filled the air, and the room was adorned with eerie decorations. It was the perfect setting for a night of Halloween-themed games and laughter. The group consisted of Emily, Mike, Lisa, and Tom, a close-knit circle of friends who had always shared a love for the macabre. Halloween was their favorite holiday, and they relished the opportunity to celebrate it together. Little did they know that this Halloween game night would lead them down a dark and terrifying path. As the night wore on, the group decided to delve into an occult board game they had discovered in the attic, a game so old and mysterious that it had been buried away for generations. The board was intricately designed with strange symbols and runes, and the instructions were written in an ancient language. They couldn't resist the allure of the enigmatic game and decided to give it a try. They gathered around the table, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on their faces. The game was called Seance of the Damned, and its purpose was to communicate with the spirits of the departed. The friends chuckled nervously, thinking it was all in good fun as they lit the candles, placed their hands on the board's planchette, and began to recite the incantation. At first, nothing happened. The planchette remained still, and they exchanged skeptical glances. But then, as if in response to their doubts, it began to move. The planchette glided across the board, spelling out cryptic messages and answering their questions. It was a chilling experience, and a sense of unease settled over the group. The spirits they had summoned were vengeful souls, trapped between this world and the next. They had been awakened from their eternal slumber, and they were not pleased. Their messages grew increasingly ominous, and the atmosphere in the room shifted from curiosity to terror. The spirits revealed their tragic stories, their unfinished business in the realm of the living, and their desire for vengeance against the living. The group had unwittingly unleashed a malevolent force, and they soon realized that they were no longer in control. As the night grew darker, the spirit's presence became more pronounced. Eerie cold drafts swept through the room, and the candles flickered erratically. The friends felt an otherworldly chill in the air and heard whispering voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mike, overcome with fear, suggested they put an end to the game. But the spirits were not ready to release their hold. The planchette continued to move on its own, spelling out horrifying threats and curses. The group was trapped in a sinister game of their own making, and there seemed to be no way out. Desperation gripped the friends as they realized the dire consequences of meddling with the supernatural. The spirits grew more malevolent with each passing moment, and they began to manifest in ghastly forms. Shadowy figures materialized in the corners of the room, their hollow eyes filled with malice. In a frantic attempt to break the curse, they tried to end the seance by extinguishing the candles, but it only seemed to anger the spirits further. The room plunged into darkness, and the friends were left in a void of terror, unable to see or comprehend the horrors that surrounded them. As they huddled together, the spirits closed in, their vengeful whispers growing louder. The friends could feel their icy breath on their necks, and their presence was suffocating. The malevolent spirits were intent on exacting their revenge on the living, and the friends were their unwitting targets. In their desperation, Emily remembered a phrase from the game's instructions, a phrase that could potentially break the curse. With trembling hands, she recited the words, "Release us from your grasp, let peace be our eternal path." As the words left her lips, a blinding light filled the room, and a deafening wail echoed through the air. The spirits were torn from their world, banished back to the realm of the dead. The room slowly returned to normal, and the friends were left in stunned silence, their hearts pounding with fear. They had narrowly escaped the clutches of the malevolent spirits, but the memory of that night would haunt them forever. Halloween night in Hollowvale had become a chilling reminder of the consequences of meddling with the supernatural and the price of curiosity. The friends had been tested by forces beyond their comprehension, and they had emerged from the ordeal forever changed, their skepticism replaced by a deep respect for the unknown.